We now move on to public business. Before we start public business proper, a decision needs to be made about whether the minimum lodging period can be reduced in connection with what will otherwise be the first matter on the order paper. Deputy Balash, do you therefore wish to make a proposition under Standing Order 26.7 that the lodging period be reduced to allow your proposition P7 to be debated at the sitting?
Yes, sir. It's customary to debate a proposition of no confidence as soon as possible, and I ask the States to allow that to take place.
Is that proposition seconded?
Yes, sir.
Yes. I may know the answer to this. Does any member wish to speak on that proposition? Those in favour of adopting the proposition to reduce the lodging period, kindly show. Those against? Very well, the lodging period has been reduced. Then the first item of public business is a vote of no confidence, Chair of Health and Social Security Scrutiny Panel, P7, lodged by Deputy Balash. I'd like to advise members that under Standing Orders, Deputy Southern, as the subject of the proposition, will have the right to speak a second time during the debate, immediately before the proposer, Deputy Balash, sums up. So that means that when Deputy Southern speaks for the second time, there will be no other speeches except that of Deputy Balash. I've also ruled that Ministers for Health and Social Services and for Social Security will not be able to vote on the proposition. They are able to speak but not vote. Standing Order 120 provides that ministers cannot participate directly in the appointment of the chair of their scrutiny panel, and accordingly they cannot nominate candidates, nor can they vote in any corresponding election. It seemed to me to be entirely therefore appropriate, as a decision on this vote will be in effect a decision on who may remain or not remain as chair of the scrutiny panel, then it would be inappropriate for those two ministers to vote. That is consistent with Standing Order 120, and as I say, they can speak during the debate but may not vote. I ask the greffier to read the proposition.
The States are asked to decide whether they are of opinion that they have no confidence in the chair of the Health and Social Security Scrutiny Panel.
Deputy.
As I stated in my report, it is a great pity that the Health and Social Security Scrutiny Panel has come to something of an impasse where there is, in my view, no good reason for two members of the panel to resign, but the chair says that he is unwilling to work with them, and therefore there is this blockage. It is doubly a pity, in my view, because we are a panel composed of members with different political views, which in a scrutiny panel is a great strength. However, we are where we are, and I'm afraid that it is now for members to decide whether to back this motion or to reject it. The impasse, sir, has been explained in my report. Deputy Southern and I seem to be divided by what we each perceive to be the proper way in which scrutiny should be engaged. Let me say, first of all, where I'm sure we agree. We both accept the guidelines laid down in the Code of Conduct for elected members and the Code of Practice for engagement between scrutiny panels and the Public Accounts Committee. None of that is in issue. There is no place in scrutiny for rudeness or aggression, or the use of vulgar or inappropriate language. The scrutineer is the critical friend, and between friends, rudeness and aggression should be out of bounds. However, there are occasions when firm questioning is perfectly in order. This is scrutiny, and being scrutinized is not always wholly pleasurable. I know that from my own experience as a Minister of External Relations. Misleading or evasive statements need to be challenged and tested, and one cannot do that by always being honey sweet. So I would have expected that all those propositions would be accepted by members of the Assembly, whether on the ministerial or on the scrutiny side. So the next question is whether Deputies Ward or Howell have fallen short in any way. All my professional life, sir, I have been involved in the work of the courts, whether as an advocate or as a judge. The examination and cross-examination of witnesses is essentially what happens in scrutiny. Occasionally, one might have an informal exchange of views before a scrutiny panel, which would be out of place in a court. But generally speaking, the processes are quite similar. It is the function of the judge, as it is the function of the chair of a scrutiny panel, to ensure that witnesses are treated fairly. Members of a scrutiny panel are generally not professional advocates and cannot be expected to behave like them. A chair must allow, in my view, some slack in terms of exchanges which are not strictly questions, particularly for new members. I do not think that there were any occasions when the two deputies seriously overstepped the mark, but in any event, it's the function of the chair to moderate discussion. If he was unable to do that, it is difficult to have confidence in him as a chair. This is a debate about the chair of the scrutiny panel, but it is impossible not to refer to the letter of complaint written by the Minister of Health, because it is that which has led us to where we are. I'm grateful to the Minister that she has not raised any objection to the circulation of the letter, and I'm glad that members have had the opportunity to read it. I think that the letter was misguided. It was factually wrong in its allegations against Deputy Ward. Although it does not expressly mention the word bullying, it is tantamount to an accusation of bullying against the deputies. That is not a nice accusation. Deputy Southern does indeed mention that word in his written response circulated to members. And the trouble with such accusations is that they can be used as a weapon, a means of stifling or inhibiting criticism or dissent. Bullying involves the abuse of power against someone in a weaker position. Senior officials in the health department appearing before a scrutiny panel are not in a weaker position than members of the panel. They have not been bullied. In any questioning, indeed, they hold most of the cards. It is an absurd accusation. I'm afraid, sir, that the Minister has overreacted. If there were concerns, they could have been dealt with in a different way, not least by a frank discussion with the two deputies involved. However, this is not a debate about the Minister. It is a debate about Deputy Southern and whether members have confidence in him as chair of the scrutiny panel. On receipt of the letter, Deputy Southern's immediate reaction was to tell Deputies Ward and Howell to stay away from the scrutiny panel meetings planned for the following week and to ask for the deputies' resignations. Why did he not call them in for an open exchange of views? Why not try to solve the problem rather than being antagonistic and making things worse? If Deputy Southern had troubled to speak to Deputy Ward regarding the complaint against her, he would have discovered the truth, and he would indeed have been able to defend her against the criticisms of the Minister. But even after I told him the facts, he was unwilling to do so. So I'm not going to rebut every one of Deputy Southern's comments in his written response, but it is way off the mark. He makes much of the public hearing on the 1st of December. Over the weekend, I carefully reread the transcript of the hearing, which I, in fact, missed because I was proposing a candidate as a jurate. Deputy Southern started it with a dig at his panel members. I hope this meeting can be conducted as a conversation rather than an interrogation. But I must say that, in general, it seemed to me to be a good-tempered and valuable exchange of views with the Minister. The Minister was able to convey to the panel some very useful information. There were occasionally mildly spiky moments, but they came, if I may say so, as much from the Minister as they did from Deputies Ward and Howell. This is a debate about the chair of the scrutiny panel and the way in which he reacted to the letter, but it is also a discussion about scrutiny itself. We are all, as members, bound by mutual obligations to respect each other's views, even if we do not agree with them. Politics, as we all know, is a disputatious business. There are rules for expressing those disagreements and for engaging with officials. But we need to be careful that we do not inhibit the free speech, which is an essential element of our democracy. A letter which threatens to refer members to the Commissioner for Standards if they do not change their behaviour is highly unusual. Even if it was not intended to do so, it was clearly going to inhibit the way in which questioning was conducted. It was also inappropriate, actually, against the background of the open secret that the Health Department is not in a good place. I say that not as a criticism of anyone, but as an objective fact. Waiting lists for surgery are far too long. Consultants' appointments are delayed. There is a serious problem with staffing. Patients with mental health problems are in the general hospital when they should be somewhere else. And a lot more. Any scrutiny panel, but especially this one, must be able to test and challenge officials without fear of being reported to the Commissioner for Standards. It's the job of politicians. I do not think, sir, that the Minister's overprotectiveness of her officials is a helpful stance. Both Deputies Ward and Howell are hugely qualified by their experience to sit on this panel. Their knowledge may occasionally be uncomfortable for officials and even for the Minister, but that is not a reason for seeking to throw them off the panel. It is very surprising, sir, that Deputy Southern should have revealed himself as an enemy of free speech in this way. If the boot had been on the other foot, we would rightly have heard squeals of outrage from Deputy Southern and his colleagues in the Reform Party. I am sorry to say, sir, that Deputy Southern has shown himself unfit to act as the chair of the Health and Social Security Scrutiny Panel. I move the proposition.
Proposition seconded. Do you wish to speak now, Deputy Southern? You'll have a second chance, of course.
Yes, sir. I start by saying, what a horrid day. But in order to put a smile on my face, I look at my record. It starts in 2003, when I was nominated by Terry Lamar, then Senator Terry Lamar, to be on the Home Affairs panel, because there was nobody from St Helier on that particular panel. And it then followed at my next duty in 2004, who was to be chairman of a scrutiny panel when we were just inventing scrutiny, reinventing, where I took that year 3 reports responding to drug use, Jersey tourism, relocation and lease of new office accommodation, and migration policy, monitoring and regulation. We've been there again since. But as I was looking through my experience, and it is a long experience, I came across Jersey Telecom privatisation in January 2008. And I was in charge of that review, and there were a couple of really excellent advisors we got from Nuffield, and we did a first. We actually got an Italian professor from Milan who had witnessed the privatisation of the Italian telecoms and had wonderful information to give us again. What a first that was. Equally, today is a first. It's the first time I, in my life, as a human being or as a member of this state, have never been accused of being an enemy of free speech. that is, to my mind, just straightforwardly insulting. And I object to that most deeply. And those of you who know me, and many of you do, would, I'm sure, give voice to exactly the opposite. I'm a champion of free speech. I'm a champion of scrutiny done in the right way. And I've been doing it in the right way for the past 20 years. So, the accusation that I have been unfair to two of my ex-members of my panel, Deputies Howell and Ward, was not taken lightly. It was taken after serious and prolonged thought. My decision was, please, I can hear the whisper, it's all right.
I think it's quite important in a matter such as this, the deputy should be able to speak without any suggestion of interruption in any way.
Thank you, sir. And I had serious reservations before the letter of complaint arrived about their behaviour of these two members. But like Deputy Balash, when the makeup of the Health and Social Security Scrutiny Panel was decided at the start of this session, I too considered my panels to be well balanced. Deputy Balash, having had many years of experience in the way the state works, although very little, next to no, experience of scrutiny, because he'd never been a scrutineer. I was hopeful that we could form an effective team, and I even offered a further place to Deputy Howell, with all her experience of the island's health system, along with her concerns, and we shared this theme of the about concerns about the health insurance fund. Experience tells me, I think, that two of those two members, have failed to comply fully with the elected members' code of conduct. Article 5, elected members should at all times conduct themselves in a manner which will maintain the strengths and strengthen the public's trust and confidence in the integrity of the states. Elected members should at all times treat members of the states, officers, and members of the public with respect and courtesy and without malice. I don't believe that has been adhered to all the way through the last 3 months. And I'll show you the evidence that makes me feel that. Article 8, similarly, I concurred with the direction to Article 8. Members should not disclose publicly or to any third party personal information about named individuals which they receive in the course of their duties unless it is clearly in the wider public interest to do so. And I'll make reference to that later on. My concerns centre on the essential need to form good working relations between ministers, officers and members of scrutiny panels in order to enable good and efficient scrutiny to take place and to increase thereby the transparency of the process. As anyone who has experience of scrutiny will attest, the creation of the critical friend is an absolutely vital part of the process. If ministers and their officers cannot be sure that they will be treated with respect and in confidence when the scrutiny process, then the scrutiny process will collapse. I believe that that has happened in the case of this panel. As I sometimes put it, ministers who come to give evidence to my hearings are made to work hard, not to make tea and buns. Establishing the correct balance between criticism and friendship and the trust that goes with it is essential to get the most out of the process. I believe the trust between the panel and the Minister has irrevocably broken down and could not be restored while the two deputies remained in place. Having said that, I spoke to both of them about possible future training and said, certainly in both cases, I would welcome them back in 6 months, 9 months down. I understand there is more training to be taking place by the GREF, and I think that might be a way forward, but not for the moment because of that breakdown. A letter of complaint against a member of a panel is a serious one. In my 23 years in the States, mainly dealing with scrutiny, I have never heard of one. But let's have a look at some of the evidence that makes me feel that my actions were correct. On the 9th of August 2022, at a Teams training session, there was a complaint from the training company about Deputy Ward's disruptive and combative behaviour. The trainer concerned ended up in tears. The greffier subsequently had words with Deputy Ward pointing out the need to pay attention to Article 5 of the Code of Conduct for elected members. So that's one experience. The product was a woman in tears. On the 1st of December 2022, I had a private meeting with ministers and officers regarding an amendment to the government plan 2023-26 about the HIF. I was responding to the concerns about the HIF. Both Deputy Ward and Deputy Howell became disruptive and loudly spoke over one another. They were, in effect, shouting at the Minister. I was forced to step in, and Deputy Balash could say this is wrong with me in some way, or that I was out of control. I was forced to step in, somewhat in the manner of a wrestling referee, in order to bring back order to the meeting. I literally had to stand there. One deputy, second deputy, stood there. There was the Minister. They were shouting at her. Please stop, I said. Please stop now. Please stop. That sort of behaviour, shouting at the Minister, is no way to give anyone who witnessed it any confidence that they will be treated with respect when coming to the panel. And that's what I think the ultimate breakdown is associated with. I note that Deputy Balash was not present on the 1st of December for this session. And I'm not surprised that he and I have different versions of what happened, because I was standing there and he wasn't present. He never came across that. On the 19th of January 2023, at a panel meeting, I raised the issue of the Code of Conduct and the appropriate manner in which members should behave during meetings or hearings. I indicated forcefully that such behaviour is unacceptable to me and was not to be repeated. I don't believe I could have been much stronger than that in order to get the right sort of behaviour out of the members. On the 2nd of February, following this ticking off, if you like, in another private briefing on waiting lists with the Minister, the Director General and HCS officers, the Minister and the Director General were unhappy with the way that Deputy Howell communicated with them, saying her behaviour was inappropriate and full of accusations. The Director General chose to leave the meeting, which ended with an extremely icy atmosphere. I consider these incidents combined to be egregious breaches of the Code of Conduct, which are damaging to the reputation of my scrutiny leadership, and worse still, to the reputation of the states. What really surprises and shocks me, however, is that these behaviours are repeated time and time again. The simple rules required to conduct good scrutiny are few and far between. The scrutiny process should concern itself with evidence and not with anecdote or political beliefs. So don't take the answers into the meeting. Listen to what they question and listen to what the minister or their officers are saying. Listen first and foremost. I keep reminding my scrutiny panels that your key element is 2 ears, 1 mouth. Listen. Ask questions. Do not make statements. There's nothing a minister or his officer can do with a statement that this is the way to do things. I know. What's the point of this meeting then? Try, although it's difficult, and this is the one I find hardest, I personally find hardest, try not to interrupt. Silences often get filled by the officer rather than you. And that's when you start to learn things which maybe weren't intended to be said. None of those happening time and time again. Examination of the quarterly hearing on the 1st of December, that very day, reveals numerous political statements and reveal little of the minister's thinking, but speak volumes about the panel's members' thoughts. So we've got all sorts of statements here. Statements, often, not questions. And the difference between, well, I'll go into that later. So a statement, many staff are leaving because they've just had enough. That may or may not be true, but what use is that to the department? I don't think it's any use. At one stage, I said to my side, can I remind members to ask questions and not make statements? For example, I do think that we need to support our GPs more than we are doing at the moment. We need to get GPs over here. In the past, there was greater pay. Have you thought about that? That's 3 statements and a question at the end. What is a concern, this is again from a scrutiny member, not from the minister or the officers, is wanting more management posts. I just wanted to flag that up. Again, statements after statements. And the question, I say, and the minister says that that's opinion, I think. So the question becomes, how many interim managers are in place or in the pipeline? Patient safety, one initiative, resulted in a lot of problems, to which the minister was forced to respond. Can we pick that up after the scrutiny, minister? So again, another bit of fact, or speculation, not a fact. Another one, there have been plenty of patient discharges without the knowledge of the consultant. The minister said, Deputy, this is a view or an opinion. Please give me the evidence. And then finally, HSC 24, do you think it's safe? Again, what do you mean? Is a response service, to which the scrutineer, the deputy, says, I just think there are real problems with some of it. I just wonder how objective you've been when you have looked at this. So a question about how objective you are or not. Statement again of fact, of supposed fact. But one which actually undermines the evidence of the minister. shouldn't be happening. If we move on to one of the major issues, it's the reference to the appointment of Hugo Massey-Taylor as chair of the new HCS board and the manner in which the appointment came about. I encouraged him, said the minister, meaning Hugh Massey-Taylor, also to consider whether or not he would be interested in it, meaning the chairmanship. That statement was made in a private meeting. We then had a public meeting immediately following on that, and Deputy Ward said the following words, slightly different. Nonetheless, could the fact on your own admission that you did encourage the professor into applying for the post, that may have skewed the independence of your position as making the final decision? That statement came with a little fist pump. What it meant to my thinking was, there's a little victory. I've got her to say what I want her to say. The implication of this question is that the minister is somehow conflicted and ought not have taken part in the final decision. The use of the words "on your admission" implies some guilt where none exists. I am of the opinion that these factors are we'll leave that there. It's not relevant. The letter of complaint from the Health Minister also makes reference to anecdotal information that Deputy Ward is relaying information received in a role as member of State's Employment Board to others. I can neither confirm or deny that, but I do note her question asked in January in the States of the Minister of Health as follows. May I ask the Minister for Health and Social Services if she could update the Assembly in regards to the accommodation and associated expense costs for the recently appointed Chair of the Health Board, and to confirm the proposal to rent a 3-bedroom house, I believe, at over £3,000 a month, its refurbishment and other expenses. Now, I do not know where those figures have come from, but I suspect they may well have come from the Employment Board. If so, it would be a major breach of the rights of the individual employee of the States. In fact, I was surprised that the bailiffs permitted the detail contained in this no-notice question, identifying the employment conditions of a named employee as it does. Returning to Deputy Howell, she must recognise that without evidence, then all she possesses is anecdote and rumour, and that talking over witnesses can feel accusatory and may be interpreted as borderline bullying. I will stay with the word. It certainly appears confrontational to many. On the occasion referred to before, again, held in private, the statement made was simply this bald fact: you are not talking to your consultants. No hint of a question. You, Director, are not talking to your consultants. That contains the blame. Even "are you" afterwards softens it just a little. Make it into a question. Are you talking to your consultants? When did you last meet them? What were their concerns? They're open questions that nobody's going to get upset by. You are not talking to your consultants. It's completely the opposite. It contains the elements of blame. It's the wrong way to approach the way you're doing scrutiny. That is going to make people shut down and try not to cooperate. What members of panels must recognise is that scrutiny does not make policy. It is there to amend or improve policy based on evidence. Nor is it there to be a sounding board for pre-formed political dogma. And that is what's happened under my leadership, by all means, but time and time again. It's very difficult to stamp on that. I have tried. The consequence of this, as I see it, is that when my scrutiny panel comes to discuss the poor behaviour and culture within HCS, the bullying that we know does go on, and we will almost certainly have to do so, my panel won't have a leg to stand on. If we've already got a reputation for ignoring evidence and pursuing preformed opinions, then that must be stopped. I know from experience that scrutiny can be conducted in a way that is respectful and dignified. I know because traditionally that's the way I approach it. I totally agree with the Health Minister that as States members we must act to model best behaviour, and that is why I have taken the actions I have in the context I have. I urge members not to vote for a motion of no confidence in my own chairmanship.
Deputy Gardner.
Thank you, sir. And I decided to speak early in the debate because I would like to hear all members of the panel for the points that I will address. I found myself in a very peculiar position, I have to be honest, sir. It's not a secret that me and Deputy Thousand have not found easy to work together. I mean, sometimes we probably hardly can agree what time of day, but at the same time, that means that he is scrutinizing my work, our work as a government with passion. At the time it's difficult, and it's difficult to admit, but his scrutiny improved the decisions we made in this assembly. And I have full respect for Deputy Southern as a member and as a scrutineer, despite our different views on various matters. I also know Deputy Barbara Ward has very sharp mind and eye for details. We had several conversations, and Deputy Barbara Ward coming with outside of the box ideas, sometimes maybe strange ideas, but when you think about it and listen, you say, there is something, we can do things together. And I know that Deputy Barbara Ward wants to work in collaboration. Deputy Howell is very passionate to improve the healthcare system, and personally, as the chair of the Public Accounts Committee, when I was chair of the Public Accounts Committee at the previous assembly, I have had several engagements and found her suggestions very hopeful. Both deputies, as Deputy Baloch mentioned, hugely qualified to be members of the panel. Deputy Porre scrutinized me as a Minister for Children Education, and I always feel challenged and to be respectful and cared at the same time. And it is an option to have this balance. Deputy Philip Baloch is incredibly experienced, and his excellent skill set brings lots to the scrutiny. Both of the speakers mentioned that this panel was extremely well balanced from right, left, middle, difference of the opinion. And I would like to ask all members when they will speak of the scrutiny panel, what can be learned from this experience? What can be done and how they can work together? There is lots of things that Deputy Southern mentioned in his speech, which I 100% agree. It's about statement and not questions. It's about anecdotal or not anecdotal. We're talking about 3 or about 1 new members. We've all been there. I've been there. As a chair of the Public Accounts Committee, we had 3 trainings plus prep for the public hearing. How much training these new members done? It is a process, it's a journey. Working as part of any team is challenging. The easiest way to work with members that think like us. The most difficult way to work with members that think 180 degrees different from us. Where is the best scrutiny come? When we have a diverse team that thinks differently and in a respectful way, listening and sharing their opinion. And this is the best scrutiny for me to do. My challenge back to the panel, how can you connect and find way forward? Building on strength of each other's. And if it needs to go to the Commission of Standard, it can go to the Commission of Standard, and Commission of Standard can make a decision. Going back to my experience probably before being States member, there are 3 questions when we work on mediation or working together as a team, a new team will build. Every member can ask, what have I done that bring to this situation? And second question, what I can do differently? And what I need from other members of the panel to perform my work as effective as possible. It's very difficult and very detailed work, personal work, with professional, maybe independent facilitator. I don't believe that vote of no confidence is a guarantee to improvement. Working as a diverse team, it is a warranty for the improvement. I'm not sure how I'm going to vote because I'm really going to listen for all members of this panel as 2 members that spoke can speak again. I know the power of this good scrutiny. We want to have a good scrutiny. We need to have a good scrutiny. And I'll listen to the debate and make a decision on my vote later.
Deputy Doublé.
Thank you, sir. My speech is going to be fairly similar to my colleague here, so I will try to just stick to new points. A new perspective that I would like to introduce to this debate, which is extremely uncomfortable. I can see that all members are finding this really uncomfortable, and my preference would have been for this to be resolved before it reached the Assembly. And I will come back to that. I wanted just to reflect briefly on behaviour that's been described. And of course, this is all hearsay because I don't think many of us were actually in the room when some of these behaviours occurred. And the 2 panel members in question have been described as disruptive. And I just wanted to reflect on this because, sir, women are often judged more harshly on their behaviour. And an assertive communication style from a woman is often interpreted as aggression. And this is borne out in research. And I read something recently that said, is she being rude, or have you been socially conditioned into believing that women should be warm, positive, and friendly at all times, and are uncomfortable when they don't adhere to that behaviour? Research has shown that women in the workplace are penalised when they display assertive leadership traits which are conversely encouraged in male colleagues. And tone policing is quite common for women in leadership positions. So I advise members to bear that in mind when they're assessing the facts of the situation as they're presented to us. But the main point that I would like to make, sir, is that, so actually 2 points. The first one is that we're talking about a group of people who I think, are mostly new members, but also some very experienced members. And that's an interesting mix for me, because I do feel, as myself as one of the more experienced members of the Assembly, that we should have learnt, amongst the more experienced members, we should have learnt to help others and to help the newer members in dealing with these types of disputes, because of course we all fall out sometimes, and that many of us will fall out. Those of us who are friends and allies now will fall out later. We will make up, we will work together. It happens, and it's actually really healthy. The deputy sitting next to me, I think we work well together because we frequently disagree. And we have learned and we have taught each other ways to actually work together. And I think the work that we produce is of a better quality because we disagree. So, and I think that learning to disagree is a skill that has to be learned, and it's often a skill that has to be taught. And I would encourage the more experienced members to be generous in their time. And, you know, I look around the Assembly and I see, whereas myself, when I was a new member, I was sat next to more experienced members in the chamber, and I could ask their advice at times. And when I was thrown into scrutiny as a chair, as a brand new member, I chaired a scrutiny panel. I had more experienced members on that panel who advised me and mentored me, and I was very lucky to have had that. And the GREF at the time as well gave a lot of support with that. So I think more experienced members, but also the GREF, I would request that some reflection is given to the training and support, not just formal training, but I think the informal and pastoral support that is given to States members. I think we have made a lot of progress on there, especially following the Diversity Forum's focus on this. But I really do think that States members need more pastoral support and more support with those kind of soft skills and helping us to solve some of these disputes and mediating between us. And I would be grateful if reflection could be made in that respect. Because of course there's so many fantastic skills within the GREF to help us with these things. And to new members, ask for help as well, because sometimes you don't get the help unless you actually go and say, I need some support with this, because I have usually found that when I've asked the GREF for help, it has been there, and they're very supportive. And I just wanted to end on, I recall as a new member, brand new, newly elected, I think I was 30 years old, I was quite young, and I was sat in a training event surrounded by, you know, lots of experienced States members and some outgoing States members, and Senator Francis LeGraley was one of those outgoing members, and he's a person of considerable gravitas and experience, of course, as a States member, so I really listened to what he had to say. And he said the most important message he could give us was that we should disagree with each other in the chamber, but that outside of the chamber, there should be an enduring level of respect for each other. And I have carried that advice with me throughout my time as a States member, and I have tried. I haven't been perfect, and I don't think any of us are. I have tried to act accordingly. And I do wonder, sir, if the deputy who is bringing this today could be encouraged to withdraw it and to seek that support from the GREF in terms of mediation, because I'm sure there must be support there to solve this outside the Assembly. And I would rather not have to vote on this at all. I would rather it was withdrawn, because I don't think this is the place to have this discussion.
Deputy Rob Ward.
Thank you, sir. Being called Deputy Ward today is, it's not me involved this time, just say so. I was going to be asked to be referred to as the Deputy Real Slim Shady, but perhaps I shouldn't do that, Mrs. And I say that, sir, because this is such an unpleasant experience that I think I'm doing what too many people do at times when they feel awkward and they don't want to be somewhere, and you just say silly things so to try and break the ice a little. And that's the way I feel as I stand up today to talk about this. And I thought, what do I say? And so I took the practical approach and said, what would I want to do if I was to be treating a member of staff? And what rights do members of staff have when they engage with us as States members? And I hope I would be told, if not the case, that when I deal with all members of the officers that I deal with, I do so politely and I do so with respect, and I try and do so with an element of care in what I do. And if not, there should be a vehicle to say that I haven't done that. And so this is a very straightforward position, the right of people at work to be treated with dignity and respect. Now, sir, on the state's website, there is a dignity and respect at work policy for public employees. It was developed by the SEB, and I will say I've read it, I've been through it. It's a very good policy. It's a good policy, but it has to be implemented. And I know that we're classified as self-employed, so we would say, are you a state's employee? That's irrelevant. We are dealing with state's employees at every level, even those that we buy in to do work for us. And the notion that anyone who comes to be a trainer leaves in any particular situation it just rings an alarm bell in my mind. And I think that's what started me looking at the dignity and respect policy. How are we going to apply this? And so there are some statements in the policy that deal with where we are currently. And I've written them down here. Well, I've cut and pasted them, actually. So, everyone has the right to be treated with dignity and respect as they go about their work. That's not a simple statement. It's a very powerful one. And if that's what the State's Employment Board are saying we should be treating people, members of the State Employment Board should be certainly doing that and certainly engaging when it doesn't happen. Everyone has the right to work in an environment which is free from any form of bullying and harassment. Everyone has the right to work for an employer who finds behaviour of this nature wholly unacceptable. What Deputy Southern has done is identify behaviour that has been sent to him and say that's unacceptable and I will deal with it. This is actually not just Deputy Southern doing scrutiny. This is abiding by a policy that we have for the states, for states and public employees. That is very, very important. We will listen to and take every concern raised seriously. I'm afraid, sir, that in the opening speech to this, I do not feel that some things were taken seriously. And that concerns me from a member of the State's Employment Board. Wherever we possible resolve concerns informally, I think the Deputy has tried to do that away from this Assembly. Where an investigation is necessary, it would be fair, independent and confidential. Well, it appears, sir, that that isn't happening. It isn't happening when we have, because this has been brought to a public domain. This has now become a vote of no confidence in an individual who has tried to deal with a situation, applying a policy that exists. And later, so it says, whether you experience unacceptable behaviour or treatment, or you witness this towards a colleague, we all have a duty to speak up and report it. And there is no surprise then if the minister, any member of this Assembly, writes a letter when they see it. It's actually duty bound in the respect and dignity policy. If we're actually going, and we've had this situation with the HR lounge, and I can remember many years ago in a previous iteration giving evidence to the research that went into the HR lounge report on behalf of a trade union to talk about what has been going wrong. And there was huge hope when that came out that we will deal with these situations of bullying. But where are we today? When somebody has taken their duty seriously to speak up when they saw behaviour that was inappropriate, the person who has tried to act on that is now in front of this 49-person jury as a vote of no confidence. So, indeed, the code for the chief executive officer, chief officers and the head of administration, they might be called something different now. I didn't check this morning, but we're just going to put that one in. You are responsible for ensuring line managers and employees within your department carry out their responsibilities as set out in its policies. This includes the notification and recording of any breaches and upholding the spirit of the code of this policy in its procedure generally. Duty bound to act on poor behaviour. So when a minister makes a complaint, they are fulfilling a role. And so that exists in the higher echelons of our public service, yeah? And there is a duty to address this behaviour, therefore, in this Assembly. And so this is exactly what the chair of the panel did when receiving a complaint and witnessing behaviours that are simply unacceptable. And as a consequence of that, the deputy now faces a vote of no confidence. I just want to say that again for emphasis and to be clear. We have a respect and dignity policy published by the State's Employment Board, developed by the State's Employment Board on the website for all of our public service workers so they can feel protected. And then as soon as somebody acts on that, it is brought to the public domain, and the chair of a panel that is tried to address it now faces a vote of no confidence. Sir, I would ask this. What message is this sending to public employees out there who may be facing behaviours that they don't want to see? What is the message being sent out there? And what is the message being sent by the State's Employment Board in this Assembly and members who may think, well, actually, this has nothing to do with me, I'll abstain. This is to do with us. We have to have a policy that protects our staff, or we don't. And they may be difficult decisions, they may be difficult actions, and they may be difficult things to confront. But unless we do that, the policies that we have to protect our public employees are worthless. And that's where we were some years ago. Nobody had any trust in the policies that we have. But we are sitting here using state's time for a vote of no confidence that will achieve nothing and has just put somebody with 23 years of experience through having to stand up and justify their work for the last 23 years. So that is the type of thing that stops public sector employees, particularly those with experience, standing up and speaking up for themselves. It is dangerous, it is ineffective, and it is wrong. So there appears to be some in the background, and I'm extremely disappointed to see a member of the Council of Ministers vote, sign this vote of no confidence. If there is an issue in the background between ministers, do you know what? Use the policy and sort it out informally between yourselves. It does no good for our governance, it does no good for our government. Also, it does a great deal for me because later on I can pick it out and make great hay in this Assembly. But I'm sure that that's not what's intended. Those things need to be sorted out elsewhere. And to use somebody else as a vehicle for those issues, if that is what is happening, and I don't know, but I simply don't want to know, to be quite frank, is fundamentally wrong. And so, sir, I'm going to join, and I was going to say, somebody said it already, I would ask the Deputy, the proposer of this proposition, to withdraw this proposition. Because it is for the wrong reasons. It sends the wrong message. And I think, I appeal to members of this Assembly to really think what message this is sending. And this is what occurred to me. If I was staffing the Speak Up line, what advice would I give to people who have raised these issues today? I would be wanting to say, yes, you must raise this. This is too important to be left. If you feel that in your workplace you experience behaviour that was unacceptable, you have to speak up and we will support you. And then they may come back and say, well, we saw that happen in the States Assembly and the person who did something about it had a vote with no confidence vote against them, lost their job perhaps. And that's where we are with this. This is the position we've put ourselves in. And I wanted to speak early, sir, because that's the point that needs to be. I don't want to make any personal comment. I want to talk about whether we're freedoms. I think that's a terrible thing to say. I don't want to talk about party politics. I don't want to talk about even the process of scrutiny, because we're all learning as we go along. Some of us took opportunities with a university qualification to try and improve our work. I know Deputy Gardner and I and Deputy Alves did, and others. So, sir, I say to members, really think carefully about what we're doing here. Abstaining is tacit approval, in my opinion, and makes it very, very difficult for us to go forward and tell public sector workers, you're safe, you can speak up, and it will be dealt with appropriately, because this, sir, for one thing, is not appropriate. Thank you, sir.
Colin Harbison-Saviour.
Thank you, sir. I will be very brief. So it goes without saying that everyone should be treated with dignity and respect, be it states members or officers. Deputy Banash has brought this proposition as a vote of no confidence in Deputy Southern. And I won't repeat things that have already been said. I'm not going to get into the he said, she said business. But looking at it from the other end of the telescope, it's put all States members in a very awkward situation. We have to choose between colleagues, which is extremely unpleasant. But looking at the other end of the telescope, Deputy Southern has 4 members assisting him on the panel, 3 of which can no longer work with him. So where do we go from here? Is there a way back from this? Probably not. But decisions have to be made, and it's a very unpleasant way that we have to do it. That, as I say, I really 100% believe in due respect for all concerned, but I think we're in a very, very awkward situation now. I'm not quite sure, to be perfectly honest, which way I'm going to vote on this, but I do genuinely believe this should have been sorted out way down the road, and it's too late now. The die is cast, and we have to make a decision. If I wouldn't dream of advising Deputy Southern what to do, but if I was chairing a panel and 3 or 4 members couldn't work with me, I would resign from my post with no stain on character whatsoever. I wish everybody luck to carry on. I'll leave it there, sir. Thank you.
Deputy Hegarah.
Thank you, sir. I'm an evidence gatherer and ensure I have all the relevant facts before I can make any decision. It is clear that unless you were present in these meetings, which were not public, that you are not and never going to have the true facts and have a clear steer of what did or did not go on, because everyone's views and opinions will be very different. I am, sir, though, clear on one thing, and I will, as a States member, not tolerate any misbehaviour by my fellow colleagues, which will mean that States officers are put in an awkward position, or members of the Assembly alike. I have publicly challenged people and in private in relation to their behaviour, and make it quite clear I will continue to do so. And I have to say that I concur with the statements of Deputy Ward when he says that is exactly what our job is. In July 2022, there was an election for the chair of all scrutiny panels. Deputy Southern put himself forward for that role. No other members did so at that time, and therefore he was elected. So unless someone can show me that there are reasons why that should now change, then I won't change my mind, and I will leave it with him. I did scrutiny last time, sir, on the health panel, and we were exceptionally lucky that we had a very diverse group of individuals, all politically different, but we worked exceptionally well together. That was Deputy Elves, Deputy Pamplin, Deputy Poynton and myself. And we had people co-opted, Deputy Southern and Deputy Doublé alike. And all of those reports and all of that work that we did came out with positive outcomes. But not only for scrutiny, sir, it was positive outcomes for the health department as well. Because what we did try and what we did achieve was good scrutiny. And that meant that our recommendations, bar the odd few things, were accepted. We had a good working relationship. They trusted us all the way through. They trusted us that if they told us information, that it was kept secure. I was quite impressed, actually, sir, that when we finished at the end of the term, we were approached and we were thanked for our scrutiny work and for the fact that we worked alongside and together. Because, sir, we are a team and that's how we should be working. We are a team within this Assembly and we are expected to work as a team in relation to all States departments, whether you like the way that they are working at present or not, and you need to be scrutinised and deal with matters in a positive and professional manner, because otherwise the people of Jersey won't get what they deserve.
Deputy Barbara Ward.
Thank you, sir. If I may, sir, set out response to the Assembly. I met with the Chair of Health Scrutiny on Thursday the 9th of February in the members' computer room when I came to collect the 3rd of February letter that was written by the Minister for Health. I briefly read that letter, focusing on the content that related to myself only and not the other persons contained therein. I did explain very briefly to the points contained and stated that some of the information appears to be recollected mistakenly, especially around the first point, which referred to the two meetings on the 1st of December, the private meeting with the Health Board Chair, Professor Massey Taylor, and the Public Health and Social Services Scrutiny meeting. In item 1, just to clarify to members that when the panel met with the Health Board Chair, it was a warm and at times jovial, open and transparent meeting. And during that hour-long discussion with the Chair, was asked if he had been invited to apply for the position of Health Board, which he said no, he wasn't invited, but that he was encouraged to apply. A reasonable follow-up question was then asked, are you able to say who encouraged you? And the response from the professor was by the Health Minister. This was at a private meeting, and the panel was directed, quite rightly by our scrutiny chair, that conversations remain private. Or so I thought, because an hour later at the Public Health and Social Security meeting, it was the Minister who shared the information from the private meeting and stated she had encouraged the professor. This was recorded, and I quote from the 1st of December, page 18, and the Minister's response. As I've already outlined previously, the process was conducted by officers in terms of recruitment. At the final stage, both myself and the Assistant Chief Officer made a decision as to who was the most eligible candidate from that process. But what I'm advised is that the recruitment process involved going out to recruitment companies to source eligible people. As you have heard, because Professor Massey Taylor was here, I encouraged him also to consider whether or not he would be interested. That was as far as my interest went. Officers then took that forward in terms of sourcing a number of people. I feel it's clear from the transcript of the public meeting that it was the Minister who first revealed that she had encouraged the Professor to apply and not myself, sir. In item 2 of the letter, I'm unable to comment on anecdotal alluding to hearsay and gossip. However, at the end of a private agenda planning scrutiny meeting, I can't remember the date, attended by the panel members and officers only, both Deputy Balanche and myself had inadvertently alluded to an item, and I can't remember what the item was about, where the officers very quickly reminded us we couldn't raise anything from other panels. We apologised and thanked the officers for their good guidance. Item 3. I'm confused about this last paragraph. Questions asked at meetings, public or private, are agreed in advance by the chair and the panel members. The panel team are allocated the topics and variety of questions by the chair. The chair and the panel in a number of meetings have raised, for example, staffing employment issues due to the staffing vacancies that the health have and continue to experience. In fact, the chair on the 1st of December, sir, on page 3 and 4 of the recording, opened the session by asking the Minister questions pertaining to staffing issues in health, recruitment, retention, vacancy issues. Going back to the meeting with the chair on the 9th of February, the chair of scrutiny, in the members' computer room, the chair decided, in my view, arbitrarily, without exploring the facts in full first, and then discuss with the panel members, that he did not want me to attend any health scrutiny panel meetings the following week. That's the 14th to the 17th of February. The chair expressed, there's a trust issue with me. And I asked, was I being banned? The chair responded that they were my words. The chair reiterated he didn't want me to attend the 4 up-and-coming meetings, sir, and I expressed that I needed time to explore the letter, take advice, as this was all new to me, and would get back to the chair. As agreed, on the 12th of February, I wrote to the chair and agreed, albeit reluctantly, not to attend the identified meetings as requested by the Chair of Health Scrutiny. My reason being is I would not wish to cause any confrontation or embarrassment to the Chair, panel members or the officers, and in the hope it would provide time for the Chair to look at the 1st of December scrutiny transcript recording. Sir, from my email message to the Chair, I hope that the scrutiny recording of the 1st of December meeting would have been checked and that a meeting of the panel members would have been called to discuss the 3rd of February letter and its contents. This action appeared not to have taken place, as the next communication was a letter on the 15th of February from the Chair requesting I resign. Sir, I looked to a chairperson to demonstrate a modicum of independence, unbiased thought, conduct due diligence and support. Clearly this hasn't happened, resulting, sadly, in a breakdown in confidence and trust. Sir, I'm sorry that we are here today discussing this, but feel it highlights that there are many lessons to be learned on all sides. Please may I ask the Assembly to support this vote of no confidence in the Chair of the Health and Social Security Panel, as there is very important work that needs to be addressed. Sir, thank you and to the Assembly for this opportunity to speak to this proposition. Thank you.
Deputy Porre.
Thank you, sir. I don't often volunteer to speak in Assembly, as you all know, but I feel that today my contribution to this debate is important. As a member of the Health and Social Security Scrutiny Panel, I have been present in most panel meetings, all of the public hearings, and all of the private briefings that have taken place since the formation of this panel. I am also the Vice Chair on the Children Education and Home Affairs panel. Although I am a relatively new member to the Assembly, the fact that I sit in 2 scrutiny panels, bear it in mind each of the panels carries 2 ministers, it gives me a wider experience as a scrutineer and allows me to compare the difference in panel functionings and relationship developments. Not only relationship between panel members, but also relationships with our stakeholders and ministers. As a panel member, I understand that the scrutiny role is of great importance, and it allows for the close examination and investigation of government policies, action, and spending. It is a good way for the Assembly to hold ministers to account on their decision-making. The aim of the scrutineer is to achieve the best outcome possible when allowing for improvements in government policies, legislations, public services, while making sure that the changes are fit for purpose and reflect the community we serve. As a member of the Health and Social Security Scrutiny Panel, I would like to make clear that my work relationship with all of the 4 members is friendly, but is also respectful. And I'm not here to finger point or name shame, but the panel's journey so far has not been easy or straightforward. It is fair to say that issues debated by some panel members with ministers during panel meetings have been tense at times, with lines of questionings that were not conducive to creating good professional relationships. It has been stressful also for other members present and upsetting to officers and professionals present. Deputy Ward and Deputy Owl are passionate, and that goes without saying, about their political work, and they do have the best interest of their constituents at heart, like most of us. But I hope that it is fair to say that their passion at times has got in the way to being focused and objective scrutineers. Knowingly or not, at times it felt that some members have used the privilege of the scrutiny setting to drive their own political agenda, resulting in sharp changes in questioning directions and tense dialogues. The panel chair, after tension-driven meetings, would often reinforce the importance of how to ask scrutiny-based questions, how to positively engage with ministers in order to build good professional relationships, and to develop high standards of transparency during the scrutiny process. Deputy Surden, in my view, has been a very accommodating chair that allows us all members to express our own opinions and to contribute and add to panel meetings discussions. We will be asked today to vote against or in favour of the motion of no confidence brought in by Deputy Balash against the chair. Deputy Surden has not triggered this line of events. In fact, he has been put in an impossible position when a formal letter of complaint was presented to him by the Health Minister. When you vote today, don't vote on the personal preference of the involved politicians. Instead, put yourselves on the shoes of the chair. Okay? How would you feel if, while attempting to maintain the integrity of the panel and discipline those accused of poor conduct, you instead end up accusing of being unfair and asked to resign by your vice chair? For that reason, I will be voting against the vote of no confidence and urge other members to do the same. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Deputy. Conor Thompson.
Thank you, sir. Firstly, I'd like to applaud Deputy Doublé for her eloquent and thought-provoking speech. I share her sentiments, and I feel that the most ideal speech I could make this afternoon is to repeat Deputy Doublé's speech. However, having reviewed the information and evidence available... Sorry, sir. My computer's just gone. Having reviewed the information and evidence made available to the lead up to this debate, I feel I cannot reject this proposition. There are clear and difficult questions to be asked about how the letter from the Minister has resulted in this debate, and it is deeply concerning that we've come to such a vote less than 1 year into this Assembly. I also believe that bringing this proposition to the Assembly carries its own risks. It has thrown this dispute out into the open and asks for the Assembly to formally adjudicate in a way that will not allow us to successfully resolve the issues within this proposition. Rather, we may emerge from this debate more divided than when we came in. Although I will probably be voting to abstain, I will be doing this on the grounds that I do not believe that this dispute can be settled from a vote of no confidence. Indeed, it currently appears to be emphasising the divides in this Assembly, something we should be trying to avoid. Abstaining does not mean that I support Deputy Southern's position in this proposition. Deputies Balash, Barbara Ward and Howell are right to express concern, and I am not confident that the Minister's letter presents grounds that justify Deputy Southern's actions. This is a matter of mutual cooperation that needs to be resolved, and I do not feel confident that we can achieve this in a debate that is structured as it is, particularly given that this appears to be the first vote of no confidence in a scrutiny panel chair in over a decade. There is no clear precedent or approach to resolve this type of dispute. We need proper accountability, and if the Minister had concerns with the method of scrutiny being applied, then the Minister should have raised these concerns beyond a private letter, which having checked Hansard, it can easily be argued that the letter is not accurate. Part of the letter is also anecdotal. Deputy Southern, the chair of the scrutiny panel, has just said in his speech that we need hard evidence, not anecdote. Hence, the anecdotal evidence in the letter penned by the Health Minister should really be ignored. It is absolutely imperative that we have a functioning and fully equipped health and social security panel who can hold the Minister to account and ensure that proper scrutiny is applied. We cannot lose sight of the critical role that this scrutiny panel needs to play. This decision to abstain, which I've reached through much soul-searching, also reflects my belief that, regardless of the outcome of this proposition, we will need to resume working together and maintain healthy, operable relationships. If states members cannot do this, then resignations may follow, and I should express concerns regarding the future success of the Health and Social Security panel if Deputy Southern remains in the post and is unable to repair his working relationship with the current membership, particularly at such a critical juncture in this island's health services. As Chair of PPC, I feel compelled to remind the Assembly that there are a number of members and groups that they can approach if they have concerns around the conduct of members and the sharing of information. Likewise, the Chair could have approached PPC to inform us of his decision to suspend Deputies Barbara Ward and Howell, and that he had not only recommended that they resign, but had told them to resign. Perhaps we could have found a solution that would have restored trust in both sides, and sadly this never happened. Sorry. Turning to the statements made about the conduct of Deputies Howell and Barbara Ward, I think it is still relevant to note that these members are still relatively new to the Assembly, and that it does take time for some members to settle into public lines of questioning. Likewise, those of us who have been in the Assembly for more than a single term will likely recall heated public hearings and private briefings, where fortunately the personal disputes were settled amongst the panels. We as an Assembly should not ignore the previous episodes where the conduct between members of the scrutiny and members of government has been much less than ideal. This is not the first time where concerns of animosity have emerged between scrutiny and a minister. However, as I've already stated, these have been regularly resolved either through private discussion or other less public-facing means. The Minister has a right to express her concern if she feels it justified, and the Minister must have expected that those mentioned in her letter would have a right to defend themselves. Having reviewed the public hearings transcript, I concur with the report of the proposition that the Minister was primarily responsible for raising the issue around the appointment of the Chair of the Health and Care Board during the hearing. If there is a concern in the recruitment process, then we have other scrutiny panels available to look into this. Given that Deputy Balash is himself a member of both the State's Employment Board and the Health and... Sorry, my computer's really playing up. Yes, given that Deputy Balash is himself a member of both the State's Employment Board and the Health and Social Security Scrutiny Panel, it would be my expectation that if Deputy Barbara Ward had been relaying confidential information to the panel, then Deputy Balash would have taken action and raised concerns with the panel. And failing this, brought up concerns with SEB itself. Indeed, they could have raised concerns with myself as Chair of PPC or with the President of the SLC. The Commission of Standards is also available. None of these avenues appear to have been explored, although I do commend the panel's committee and panel's officer for ensuring that members of scrutiny have been kept in check regarding the confidentiality of information. As far as I'm aware, Deputy Balash and other members of the SEB appear to be satisfied with Deputy Barbara Ward's conduct. She has not been asked to resign from the SEB or had any other actions taken against her by the board, something that I would have expected if she had been breaching confidentiality. In relation to drawing the panel away from its purpose, I must note, having served on scrutiny throughout my first 4 years in this Assembly, that this is a concern that I'm familiar with. It is always a risk, and for that I can only encourage the panel to seek ways to clearly establish its scope or seek advice from other chairs or members to work through this issue. Regarding the statements against Deputy Howell, I found it difficult to resolve the allegations made by the Minister with the recollection it keeps disappearing. Regarding the statements against Deputy Howell, I find it difficult to resolve the allegations made by the Minister with the recollection provided by Deputy Balash. If there was something more to this, then I would welcome the Minister to provide clarity, although from what I've read and heard so far, it does not appear to align with the terms that the Minister used in her letter. To close, I would like to remind members that we have just successfully recruited the first Pan-Island Commissioner for Standards, Dr. Melissa McCullough, following the end of Paul Kernahan CBE's term of office, which is, incidentally, today. Mr. Kernahan had been very good at upholding the high ethical standards that we should all hold ourselves to in public life, and I am extremely confident that Dr. McCullough will continue to do so when she begins her role in March. If members have deep concerns or require advice or guidance about members' conduct and upholding standards, then Dr. McCullough will be available to help resolve these and address these issues. As I've said before, this is the first vote of no confidence in a scrutiny panel chair in years. I do not want this debate to set a precedent in resolving issues of trust between members. We need to find more productive methods. We have 3 more years together in this Assembly. We need to build better working relationships with each other than this if we want to deliver for the island. In the meantime, I would urge Deputy Southern and other members to seek to restore their working relationships and rebuild trust. Thank you, sir.
Sir, if I may, I'd like to seek some clarification from the last speaker.
You're entitled to ask for a point of clarification if the last speaker is prepared to give way for a point of clarification.
Yes, sir.
Thank you, sir. The reason that what I'd like to ask is, I believe that the chairman of PPC used the word suspend. I think I heard her say that Deputy Sutton had chosen to suspend.
No,
Was that the... I won't hold a conversation with the...
No, please, if you direct through the chair. I know
Yes,
it's quite
sir.
difficult with the angles you're at the moment.
sorry, sir, I haven't used the word suspend in my speech.
Right, so the word suspend was not used in the Constable St Martin's speech.
No.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Very well. Constable St Clement.
Thank you, sir. I believe the Constable of St Martin and her computer have said more succinctly and better remarks than I can. However, one thing is certain. I believe personally this is less about scrutiny and behaviour and more about, I've forgotten the phrase now, personality clashes driven by political agendas. One fact stares me in the face only, and that is the fact that this scrutiny panel is broken. I believe that the Minister has entitlement to have a scrutiny panel she can work with and not against. And I do recommend that the scrutiny panel itself is reformed. It's totally broken. I have nothing to say in argument to the scrutiny chairman's running of the panel. He's a hugely experienced scrutineer and chairman, but I don't have any facts. The fact is I don't have any facts. I was not a fly on the wall. I don't know how people have behaved, and therefore I have no compunction but to abstain from the matter. Thank you, sir.
Deputy Hull.
Thank you, sir. If I have inadvertently caused offence or distress to anyone by my questioning, I apologise to all members of the States and to officers. That was never my intention. My only intention has been to ask questions on behalf of islanders so that we can all receive answers. If we are to help solve the current serious challenges within our healthcare system that have been highlighted in at least 4 reports, then as a scrutiny panel, it is our democratic duty to hold to account the Health Minister, her Chief Executive Officer, and those in management roles within health, so that positive change can be brought about and the focus can return to excellent patient care, with our frontline staff being cherished to undertake their roles. I wish to make it clear that I have always acted in a professional manner towards the public services, responsible health and community, and have always treated the Minister and her officers with respect and complied to the best of my ability with the Code of Conduct for elected members and the Code of Conduct for engagement between scrutiny panels and Public Accounts Committee. I did not know how it has been conceived that I was displaying vitriol or disrespect. but I am sorry that my questions aren't always questions, because I failed to add "have you" to the end of a sentence. And this is a genuine mistake, and I'm not trained as an advocate. And sometimes I find it hard to find the correct wording on the spur of the moment. But I do not recognise that as bullying, sir. And I can also confirm that I have never shouted at any time whilst in the States. The role of scrutiny is to ask testing and sometimes difficult questions and act as critical friends to improve government policy in the interests of the public. That is what I and my colleagues wish to continue to do. It would seem unusual that as a result of the Minister's letter, the chair of our panel requested us to resign, rather than offering further guidance and support, and I did ask that we could work together. So unfortunately, I now ask members to please support this vote of no confidence in the chair of our scrutiny panel so that we can get on with the urgent business of scrutiny. Thank you, sir.
Deputy Scott.
Thank you, sir. Well, this has been a really kind of hard debate to be witnessing. And all I can really ask myself to do is consider what's in the public interest. And insofar as I've learned anything about leadership, I really think, because I absolutely hate being in the position where I'm actually asked to act as judge and jury in circumstances which really aren't ideal. But it's not about blame, it's about contribution. And in this, in terms of like as chairs of scrutiny panels, there's a certain theme that comes through, which is the understanding of the rules. And one rule that really hasn't been mentioned, or in fact, one whole code that hasn't been mentioned, that's incredibly relevant to scrutiny proceedings, is that the chair has to establish preferred working practices and has to work closely with colleagues to establish clear working practices to help the panel function professionally, efficiently and effectively, and in keeping with the approved framework of the Scrutiny Proceedings Code of Practice. It's our duty as chairs. We have to work with our panel members to actually ensure that they actually deliver in the public interest. And I'm not even saying it's easy. Sometimes it's very, very trying. Sometimes it really does try your patience sometimes, because if you come from a professional background and others haven't, and we are talking about a member who's had years in the States Assembly, but perhaps knows better, perhaps not. But it itself can involve a kind of clash of cultures. But then teamwork requires you to overcome that as much as you can. So coming back to the understanding of the rules, I was a little alarmed to hear the chair of the HSS panel refer to ex-members. You can't get rid of your members like that. They're not ex-members. And to refer to the code of conduct when actually dealing with the behaviour of his members, well, that really is a matter to refer to the Commissioner for Standards. As I say, when it comes to working practices, that is the job of our chairs. We have to set this out clearly, and if I haven't done so, if my panel, if anybody hasn't done with their panel, then it's something that we have to do, and we really have to drum that in. This is why we are doing this. This is why we have to do this. This is what's in the rules. So please, please comply, or else I will pull you up on that. I've been a bit discomforted even in this debate to hear a public servant mentioned by name, by the way, because I thought that was against paragraph 6 of the Code of Conduct for States members, but there you go. So, clear working practices. There is some reference to the word admission as though that's a really bad thing. Well, when it comes to evidence, admission is actually quite a common word. We are talking about members. I mean, nobody's perfect here, but we've got members who actually perhaps have not come from a background with a true understanding of what needs to be done in scrutiny, that need a certain amount of patience, a certain amount of coaching. It's quite possible. I mean, I've actually heard a lot of talk about how you should treat state's employees. Well, I don't hear about them being summarily dismissed without a fair hearing. I don't hear about them not having the opportunity to have a nice talking with. And there are actual, when it comes to, there is an actual question. We're talking about senior civil servants. Were they oversensitive? I don't know. I know none of, that this is the state that we're in. But what I do know, I mean, we've had Deputy Doubley, and I think she's made a fair point about that women can be judged in terms of like just being a bit mouthy, and Deputy Haggerett, who really would say, well, she's saying it's unreasonable to refuse to work with people. Has she ever done that? I don't know, but, maybe to actually straight away be saying, I'm not going to work with you isn't so good. I don't quite understand the whole context of the coaching that went on in this. What I do know, though, is that there's another rule in the Code of Conduct about what you should do as a chair if you do have a bit of a problem, if there is a complaint under the Code of Conduct that governs the scrutiny PA proceedings. And basically, it actually suggests, and this was referred to in the Minister for Health's letter, that it's taken to the Scrutiny Liaison Committee. I don't know how this happened. I don't know how this got here. I do not know how we got to the position where the chair actually asked people to step down before the Scrutiny Liaison Committee even was aware of this. It's in the rules. So why are we suddenly punishing people for breaching the rules if we're breaching them ourselves? So I will invite the chair to answer these questions because I'm listening. At the moment, I do believe that there are some questions that remain unanswered. Thank you.
Sir, sorry. Can I just apologise to the Assembly because I think to the Constable of St Lawrence I did actually use the word suspend. I just checked my speech. So sorry.
Well, that's a proper correction in short order.
And so my question has passed anyway.
Right, very much. Well, you're listed as next to speak if you wish to, Conor Tubbs, St Lawrence.
Thank you. I wasn't aware that I'd...
Oh, well, I wasn't sure if you were indicating a desire to intervene or to speak.
No,
if you haven't desire, I shall...
I was going to reserve my right to speak, so had I had the question answered, and if I can still reserve that right, please.
Well, yes, if I've written your name down incorrectly at this point, that's fine. Conor Tubbs, St Mary.
Thank you, sir. Even if I am second choice. I've been echoing the thoughts of all of us here that we shouldn't be here discussing this today, and it's a source of great disappointment to me that we are. But we are. In his own statement, Deputy Southern quite rightly sets out the requirements in conducting meetings, etc. I think none here will disagree with that. I think by their own admission or by the admission of Deputy Hull, if I can refer to it, she accepts she might have gone astray at one occasion and has apologised for that. Picking up on Deputy Scott's points, there is a procedure for dealing with these things. I was at one time a member of a scrutiny panel where a minister or assistant minister made a complaint against the chair to what was then the liaison committee, who tried to bounce it back to the panel, and it was the panel concerned spent ages trying to calm it down, etc. With little success, it just fell away. But a complaint has been made by the minister. She's entitled to do it. If PBC don't feel able to field it, it can go to the Commissioner of Standards. And that position was made simply to avoid the Assembly as a whole having to judge on these matters. And as the Constable of St Saviour said, we're not into position, or should be in a position where we have to believe a he said, she said argument. That's not our role. So I am not sure where that leaves me. The fact is that there were other avenues open to pursue a complaint. The complaint still stands, as I understand it. It also appears to me that and to reply to a point made by, I think, Deputy Dublé and maybe others, would the proposer of this proposition withdraw it? My understanding is that the proposition is made simply because the present chair refused to continue to work with the members. If that is the case, then we are in as Deputy Palish said, we are in a blocked position. If the present chair were to indicate he was prepared on reflection to work with them, at least until the Commissioner of Standards had given a ruling, that would be a way forward, I think, but that's not where we are as I understand it. So we are not, we haven't got a simple, or we do have a simple vote to make, and if we vote in favour of, if we vote against the proposition, we are immediately effectively losing the two health qualified members of the Assembly, which is a loss to scrutiny. We'll be put in an impossible situation, sir, and I simply do wonder whether the present chair couldn't find himself to agree to continue to work with the existing panel, at least until a more independent hearing has taken place, and then to revert if necessary. Thank you, sir.
Deputy Tom Binney.
Sir, I wonder if I could ask if Deputy Southern would be prepared to comment on that last suggestion.
I'm afraid not. Deputy Southern has the right to speak.
Right.
At some point in the future, immediately before Deputy Balash sums up, but I'm afraid we can't have interjections other than along the way.
Understood, thank you. In the absence of that comment, sir, there's a couple of points to make before I come to my prepared speech. One is that members will have noted that this morning I was asked a very direct question, I think it was by Deputy Tajir, about confidence. I believe I answered that accurately. But that said, every now and again, no matter how collaborative one is, and I believe myself to be collaborative, certain issues arise that I feel have to be challenged. And this is one of those very unfortunate occasions where I'm afraid that I feel obliged to do that. Before I actually go through the prepared speech, I would just like to invite members to ask themselves a question. I wonder how many times it is in the 40 plus years that both Deputy Ward and Deputy Howell have worked in the health service, how many times it is that they've been accused of vitriolic behaviour or bullying, and I venture to suggest that it'll be very few. Anyway, moving to the prepared speech, sir, as a signatory to this proposition, I feel obliged to explain the reasons for my involvement to members of the Assembly. This presents me with a slightly awkward situation because, to all intents and purposes, and as everyone will be well aware, it involves me in challenging the outcome of a direct request for action made by our fellow minister. However, as difficult and as uncomfortable as that may be, I feel I have an obligation to do exactly that. On the face of it, the issue to be decided today is whether Deputy Southern should continue to enjoy the support of this Assembly in his role as Chair of the Health and Social Security Scrutiny Panel. In order to do that, we must surely have to take account of the entire process that gave rise to this proposition. As I see it, it was triggered by the Health Minister's letter to Deputy Southern asking him to address her complaints as he deemed appropriate. On receipt of that letter, it seems to me that as Chairman of the Scrutiny Panel, Deputy Southern was required to do several things. Firstly, to examine the complaints and ask himself whether he considered the claims to be accurate and valid, and if so, to decide upon an appropriate course of action. So it's my contention that he exercised poor judgment in both areas, and here's why. Taking those things in order, and on the basis of the evidence provided, certainly relevant to this proposition, it would appear that the Health Minister's complaints about Deputy Barbara Ward were generally unfounded and or based, in her own words, on anecdotal evidence. This is an important point, sir.
With regard to the complaint about Deputy Howell, I'm sure it wouldn't be disputed by anyone, including Deputy Howell, that one or more of her comments were delivered as statements. And in one instance, the description accusation could possibly be applied. But this, especially for a relatively new States member, is a minor transgression and certainly not requiring her removal from office. So the next question for the Chairman should have been one of proportionality. Even if they had been accurate, the Health Minister's complaints should have resulted in no more than some type of formal sanction, perhaps in the form of guidance, a verbal warning, even written warning, depending on what may or may not have taken place previously. As a stickler for due process when it suits his purposes, this is something that ought to have come naturally to Deputy Southern, but in this instance, however, it appears to have been overlooked. Sadly, taking two steps back from the centre of this dispute, I can't help feeling that we have been drawn unwittingly into a game of shoot the messenger. It may well be the case that Deputy Southern should not remain chairman of the Health and Social Security Scrutiny Panel. And given the lack of judgment demonstrated, I'm very much of the opinion that he should not. However, if the Health Minister didn't intend the scrutiny chairman to seek the removal of Deputies Howell and Barbara Ward, I can't help asking myself why it is that, to the best of my knowledge, she didn't see fit to intervene in the early stages of this controversy to inform Deputy Southern that the dismissal of these two individuals was not what she had in mind, unless, of course, it was. So that is something upon which we can only speculate, and not a matter directly related to today's vote, other than the extent to which it relates to Deputy Southern's judgment, or lack of it, in connection with the initial complaint. So, in closing, I couldn't help noticing that in the final paragraph of the information he sent to Assembly members last Friday, Deputy Southern states the following, and I think he quoted it himself. I know from experience that scrutiny can be conducted in a way that is respectful and dignified. I totally agree with the Health Minister that as States members we must act to model best behaviour. Well, sir, I'm sure that's something upon which we can all be agreed. I would just add that when making these or other lofty statements, it is especially incumbent upon those who choose to express them that they first become models of their own preaching. Finally, sir, I'm reliably informed that some members are finding this matter awkward and as a consequence are contemplating abstention. If that is correct, and a dispute comes to a vote, could I humbly request those involved to consider their position carefully and actually make a firm decision one way or the other? Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much, Does any other member wish to speak on the proposition? Honourable St Brillard.
Thank you, sir. And I'd like to take a fairly high-level position on this based on my experience over several years in scrutiny in various guises. So I first started in 2005 after being elected and found myself on the Economic Development Scrutiny Panel chaired by Deputy Southern. So we produced several reports. Deputy Southern was, in my experience, a good chair. On that panel was the then Deputy Martin, the then Senator Brecon and Deputy Lewis. Once again, we were a mixed bag, if you'd call it that, but it was an interesting period. I would say in retrospect, and it's always easy to do that there was not much harmony between the chairman at that time and the Minister for Economic Development of the day, and I'm sure the chairman would agree to that. But still, we produced several reports, and the minister was suitably challenged. That followed, sir, in the next term when I found myself elected as Minister for Transport and Technical Services, and the scrutiny panel applying to that department was chaired by the then Deputy Philip Rondell. And I viewed that scrutiny panel as what some might have termed a committee in the old sense, in the pre-ministerial days sense. And I do believe it worked, sir. And there were some members on that panel who made a significant contribution to the work of my department of the day. And one of those I can allude to was Deputy Wimberley of Deputy St Mary at the time, who was not afraid to challenge her. And some of us here will have experienced his 3-hour challenge in a rescindment motion to the Energy from Waste Department. But subsequent to that, he made a great contribution to the work of the department. So in my third term as scrutiny panel chair once again, I think we had a successful panel. Many of the members on that panel are here today. And yes, so there were some feisty members, there was some challenging debates, and I'm sure sometimes the ministers or officers would have rather not be there. But the result was, I think, in better decision making and a better outcome from the point of view of the public. So we all have different styles of chairmanship. Some will be more confrontational. Possibly mine isn't. And I would say I feel I've always got more out of ministers and officers, possibly by being non-confrontational. And that's my style. Others will differ. Likewise, ministers, when they are told, when they're elected to the role, they need to be abreast of their briefs. And I think that those who aren't abreast of their briefs will actually struggle, because they will find themselves challenged by people who probably know more about their brief than they do. And that's sometimes when ministers do struggle and rely heavily on the support of their officers. If this proposition were to succeed, the inference to me and consequence is that the minister will clearly need to consider her position. I think there have been mistakes made on the minister's side, as well as the scrutiny panel chairman's side. I would refer to the chair of PPC's comments, sir, and I think there is mileage in PPC looking at this process, whichever way the vote goes. And I would refer PPC to the parishes, sir, who have a complaints process, and the Constable of St Lawrence remind me of this only yesterday or the day before. We have quite a thorough complaints process, which I know ends up with the Commissioner for Standards, but there is a process there for those to follow, should they so wish. One could say, sir, that ministers need to be quite thick-skinned and broad-backed on this. Should they actually just man up and have to deal with these situations? I suspect, sir, when getting elected to be a minister, you need to be aware of what might be coming your way. It's difficult to decide which way my vote shall fall on this occasion, sir, but I think there are lessons to be learnt whichever way it goes, and I will await further speeches. Thank you, sir.
Deputy Andrews.
Thank you, sir. Now, this has actually been very concerning for me. I understand with scrutiny, it needs to be collaborative, and also you have to have a good relationship with the minister. And I believe that some members have a very strained relationship with the minister, and therefore I'd probably consider longer term the relationship with scrutiny panel and the minister is untenable, unfortunately. And I'm not too sure if that relationship can be fixed. I know I've been aware of this probably for the last couple of weeks, where there have been evidentially tensions building. And I think what's really making it rather complex when I'm assessing the situation is we have two very credible members in Deputy Andy Howell and Deputy Barbara Ward, who have an extensive background in health and who I think are there to actually advise fellow panel members and to provide, I guess, a level of specialisation, because that, of course, is their background, and of course we need to have that level of experience across all of the scrutiny panels, and I don't think we do with some of the panels that we have currently. But I also understand with Deputy Jeff Southern, he is a chair and he has to be responsible for making sure that everybody is abiding to procedures. And I think that can actually be quite difficult, even being a new member myself, sir. It's quite overwhelming, especially being a member on 3 different scrutiny panels. Sometimes I needed to be prompted, especially within the first month or 2 when I was elected to the scrutiny panels. And I think maybe from my perspective, it's quite difficult to really understand what is happening when there are private briefings, because again, I don't know intricately the details of what's been going on. And actually what we do see is 2 sides who, again, are against one another. I think as many members have actually voiced their concerns about, proceeding with this vote of no confidence, it's probably not wise. I think the panel, ideally, should be in a position where all 5 panel members speak to one another around the table. And I think now, as an assembly, we have to really try and encourage and reinforce them to do just that. I know there potentially might be some reservations, potentially with the chair and the 2 panel members who have had complaints filed against them. And I do hope also Deputy Balash would be obliging in maybe consolidating this position, because I think that would probably be best in the long run. Because if we continue as we are, I'm afraid scrutiny will be in a very bad place. And I think there have actually been a number of tensions. I don't think this is the only panel, if we are going to be honest about that, where issues have been made aware, and I think probably become more pervasive across the Assembly. And it's really important, especially when we're looking at the health panel, that there is robust scrutiny. And I think we have actually seen that the panel are very capable in that respect, because I think they pulled off probably one of the best ever amendments that I've actually seen during the government plan. And it was actually thanks to Deputy Barbara Ward and Deputy Andy Howard, who I believe probably delivered 2 of the best speeches in that debate. But actually, they showed as a panel that Deputy Jeff Southern was willing to listen to 2 of his panel members, who also have an extensive background in health, and who actually made him think about things differently. So actually, he was willing to work with them, both them, and all of them were collegiate at that point. And look what happened. I believe the vote outcome was about 29 against 14. So they are very much capable, and we know that. And even with myself, sir, I actually engaged Deputy Barbara Ward and Deputy Jeff Southern probably about 2.5 weeks ago, because I was interested in joining the panel at some point in time, if it was even maybe for one review. And the reason being is because I actually realised I'd be working alongside a former bailiff in Deputy Sir Philip Balash, Deputy Jeff Southern, who has, of course, been a member of scrutiny for 23 years, and the excellent Deputy Barbara Ward and Deputy Andy Howell, alongside the Deputy B. Poirot. I think actually it's a very diverse and a very strong panel when we look at it in terms of quality. But the other thing that really is quite concerning, and I have to be quite frank about this, is the potential tensions that we could be seeing among the Council of Ministers. Of course, as we saw Deputy Tom Binney, he was a proposer with this proposition. And I think there probably are some members who are quite apprehensive about this, because it's quite early on in the term, only 8-9 months in, and we have a vote of no confidence to deal with. I believe it should be withdrawn, and I'm saying that as one of the younger members of the Assembly. I don't think this is a lost cause. However, we all have to be willing, okay, to accept that this is not a school playground. We have to be adults about this, and we have to sit around the table. Because I don't really want to be seeing one of the best panels that we have be decimated, be broken up, and have to be reconstituted. Because one of the reasons why I was actually willing to join the panel is because it was probably the panel where I was going to learn the most. And because it was an area where I consider it to be a weakness in terms of my knowledge of health and social security, I was able to actually work alongside 5 individuals where I can learn from them. They're all older than me, and also I believe they have a good background, a good level of knowledge. And we are here today having to speak about potentially seeing Deputy Jeff Southern be removed from his position as chair. And the concern I have here is, if that does take place, the tensions between the Health Minister and the 3 remaining members are not going to be providing good and constructive scrutiny. And I think what we really need to be seeing is a better connectivity between the executive, the Council of Ministers, and scrutiny panels, and the individuals on the scrutiny panels. Because I have to say, I've been in a position on a panel where, yes, we have had our differences, and it's probably been partly down to all of us being new to the Assembly, for instance. But the one thing that we did is we all sat down as a panel and we spoke through our differences. And that's actually a much better process. And it's something that all panels should be capable of doing. It is no good having a panel of 5 members and having a discussion between only 2 members, because actually 3 members have been omitted from that discussion, that important discussion, where actually you could have a better outcome potentially. And I know I'm probably going on a bit, but you know, the point of the matter is, you know, this doesn't have to happen, and I think we can all see that this is the nuclear option. And even today, when I walked into the building, usually there's 8 or 9 members in the members' coffee room, and there's only about 3 of us because everybody didn't want to come in. Nobody wants to be voting yes or no, and that's why we are seeing plenty of our colleagues think about abstaining, because we don't have all the information available to us. And yes, we're probably looking at everybody involved. I don't think anybody can say they are 100% correct in all of the decisions they have taken. And actually, there is probably some level of blame with every single member to some extent. But let's actually acknowledge here, we have a very good panel. We have good individual members. And I happen to actually respect all 5 of the panel members and also the Health Minister. I have a good relationship with everybody, and that's the way how it should be. And I'm being asked to take a decision, and actually, by taking a decision, somebody's going to probably turn around and think, well, I think of you in a different way now, Deputy Andrews. And that's fair enough. But I really think, you know, from the time I finish my speech, we need to be seeing some level of communication happen, if it's via messenger or via emails, to actually say, come on, let's just call it a day. We need to withdraw this proposition, and actually we need to probably go through the statescraft. We need to arrange several meetings. It's going to probably be a more prolonged process. However, I want to keep a panel in place, okay, that is a good panel and actually very constructive, I think, to some extent. Yes, there potentially have been some things that have been said, and that's probably down to inexperience, but I hope that members could actually learn from the mistakes they have made. I've certainly made mistakes in scrutiny, and actually one of the problems I guess I have had is I've not had the experience around me. I've only had fellow colleagues who are newbies to politics like myself. And it's only by me contacting, say, former politicians and asking questions and them giving me feedback that I'm really able to learn, and that's an ongoing process. I've probably got about 3 or 4 politicians who were formerly in the legislature last term, who I keep in regular contact with, and they guide me, because that's the way how it should be. Otherwise, I would probably be quite lost. And also, I'm an independent member, and it's probably even more difficult in that respect. So I think I've probably done quite a lot of talking there, but I really do hope that there is now a line of communication between the 5 members. I think it needs to happen. And also with the Chief Minister as well. We need to ensure, as the head of this legislature, that, you know, even she might need to be involved, and also the head of SLC as well. Because the public should not be seeing the personalised politics be so conspicuous. And unfortunately, that is exactly what is happening. You know, we should be really getting on with other states' business. And instead, we are wasting our time. And actually, we could be discussing potentially my training minimum wage. I'd much prefer that. Let's increase it. Let's do it. Come on, everybody. So I'll probably leave it there, sir. But no, thank you for allowing me the time to speak.
Thank you very much, Deputy. Deputy Coles.
Thank you, sir. I'll try not to filibuster too much because I'd rather not have the debate for my amendment to the Climate Council and start until tomorrow morning, but if it starts this evening, I'm okay with that. So this debate has been very, very interesting. I'm hearing a lot of different points backwards and forwards, and I'm not just going to stand here as a member of Reform and support another member of Reform because there's other things in play here. I believe that this motion of this vote for no confidence in the chair has come prematurely, as Deputy Andrews comments, it's the nuclear option. There has been so much more that could have been done before. I'm not 100% sure what PPC provides in the way of mediation, but surely there should be some sort of mediation that takes place, that conversations could be had between all panel members. There should be, I mean, we talk about the Commissioner for Standards. Obviously, we're going through a small transition at the moment, but this reference to the Commissioner of Standards could still be made, and it could be made by anybody. It could be made by a deputy who's been accused, the accuser, or the minister who's making the points. There are so many options that we've come to, but here we are now being asked as members of an assembly who weren't present in these meetings to base our assumption on someone's leadership of a panel based solely on what is considered somewhat anecdotal, a little bit of recorded information, but still with a number of grey areas. And I feel that's very unfair to a lot of members who are in this room who don't know other members of the panel. I mean, yes, I work with Deputy Howell on the planning committee. I've had 1 or 2 meetings with Jeff Southern in my time. But I've never had a professional meeting with Deputy Ward or Deputy Balash. So I cannot comment on how they actually perform in certain environments. So I would be more pleased to see this vote of no confidence withdrawn rather than forcing members to vote on it, because it feels almost like we're asking to choose sides in a battle that doesn't exist. This is scrutiny. This is supposed to be about helping develop policy and move things forward rather than, well, he's not doing what I want and she's not doing it like I would like it to be done. And I just feel this is a bad way to go. I mean, a reference to the Commissioner for Standards, in my mind, should have come way before this. It's not telling teacher, we're professionals. If we're not sure about something, we should seek guidance. As Deputy Andrews mentioned with everything, I'm very fortunate to be a member of Reform, and I'm standing here because I've got other members who have been here before me to help guide me through some of the issues that I'm having. The GREF did produce some training for us when we started, and it's a very, very steep learning curve, very, very quickly. And some parts of it are very difficult to really wrap your head around what is appropriate for what area. I mean, we've got so many different mechanisms that we can question ministers and departments based with either written questions, oral questions, questions without notice. Do all of these things belong in the scrutiny panel? Is that where a grey areas come out? You know, are these questions actually perfectly valid from these members, but just in a different place at a different time? So I really do struggle with with people being asked to vote one way or another on it. And with reference to Deputy Binay's questioning people for abstaining, actually, I support anybody who chooses to abstain in this matter, because if you weren't there, how can you know? If you haven't read all the transcripts, if you haven't watched the videos, if you haven't had chance, we're all busy individuals. I mean, the constables alone with their parish work makes them incredibly busy. Deputy Andrews, member of 3 scrutiny panels. If anybody wants to read the details we get provided on a planning bus week, that's a lot of work to read. The background papers for the PAC, it's a lot of work that we're all involved in. How can we all ensure that we can take the time to perfectly and accurately process all the information that has been presented to us and make an informed decision today that somebody has acted accordingly or against standing orders or anything that makes a vote of no confidence relevant? So I welcome any member that chooses to abstain from this vote, but I would prefer it if the proposer would actually consider withdrawing this, because, let's face it, we've wasted a lot of our time this afternoon already. But thank you, sir.
Before we move on, could I just make the point, and it's not singling you out, Deputy, because you are not the only person who's done it, but on more than one occasion in the speeches, Deputy Southern's been referred to by his first name, conjoined with his surname. It's not appropriate. We only refer to the first names if there are people with the same surnames sitting in the Assembly. So you say that's on a very rare occasion. So at other words, it's simply Deputy Southern. Very much. Deputy Levy.
Thank you, sir. I'd like to ask for Standing Order 85 to be invoked. I think enough time's been passed. Key members have spoken. I feel this is a totally unedifying debate. There will be no winners. And as many members have said, the scrutiny panel, the scrutiny liaison, possibly the Commissioner for Standards need to sort it out, but it needs to be sorted out somewhere else other than the States Assembly.
So you're proposing to move to the next items pursuant to Standing Order 85?
Indeed.
My obligations are to be satisfied that there is no prejudice to the rights of a minority, infringement of the rights of a minority. A substantial number of members have already spoken, so I don't therefore think there's any question of it being an infringement of the right of minority. The only observation I would make is that if this is passed, there is nothing to prevent the proposition being relisted again and the matter continuing. It doesn't bring it to an end, it simply brings it to an end today. What could happen in the intervening period, of course, is not for me to say, but I should explain that that is a consequence, and that's that members should understand that. Aside from that, standing orders require that I put the matter immediately to the vote without debate, and accordingly, the proposition to be put to the vote is, I assume it's seconded? Yes. The proposition to be.
So, can I ask a point of procedure or order?
Yes, you
Deputy
can.
Cadia? I can't get to the typing, I'm afraid, so quick. How many people, if any, are
20.
waiting to speak?
Oh, I beg your pardon, that wasn't the question. That wasn't procedural. I have 2 listed to speak, in addition to which, of course, Deputy Southern will have another speech, and of course, Deputy Balash will have a speech. There may be others who wish to speak who haven't indicated a desire to do so.
Thank you.
Very well.
Sorry, sir, can I just ask a question? What are we going to do? Just terminate the debate,
Yes.
but leave the proposition open?
Yes. The matter ceases to be debated today. There is no vote taken on it. There is no decision made about it. It simply falls into a limbo until somebody wishes to have it relisted for debate. But it hasn't gone away. It's simply not being dealt with today. Very well.
So was that, if I may, sir, was that it just doesn't go away?
It doesn't go away. I mean, effectively, I can say Standing Order 86, for example, when the debate on a proposition resumes following C, a decision by the states to move to the next item, the proposer may move the proposition afresh. It would require a request to relist it. In other words, it would be open to the proposer or anyone else to, I think, wish to have it relisted. But if that doesn't happen, it will in effect fall away. But that's a different question. It doesn't cease to exist as a proposition. It continues in a kind of limbo until somebody, sorry to be flippant, pokes it with a stick, as it were. And
I don't think that helps me at all, sir.
And do something else. Deputy Bond?
Yes, sir, it's just a point of clarification. What happens to the panel? Because we've got work to get done.
That's an
Am I
entirely...
supposed to be still banned?
I'm sorry, Deputy, it's not an improper question.
Sorry.
It's an improper question for this occasion.
Okay.
The simple position is that technically nothing has happened. So there is still a position where Deputy Southern would remain as hasn't had a vote of no confidence voted against him. The position is exactly the same as it was as members walked into the room. And it's for members to decide whether that's an acceptable state of affairs by voting on this proposition, over which I have no discretion. I have to allow it.
So the panel still stands?
I can't answer you any further than that. There would be no change in the short position. Yes, Deputy Scott?
Sorry, sir, just, I know we need to vote on this, but am I right in thinking that it is also possible to bring a proposition to move to a vote?
Well, not now, because there is this proposition before the Assembly,
after,
which has been proposed and seconded. Whether there are other procedural items that can be dealt with instead, but not at the moment, we have to deal with this particular proposition. Very well. The vote is on whether or not the Assembly should move to the next item, which means that the debate on this item is terminated, and we then move on to the next item of public business. I think I've given all the guidance I can to members as to the potential consequence of that vote. I think this is a matter that should be dealt with by the appel and not on a stand. And I therefore invite any members not in the Assembly to return to the chamber.
Sir, I'm just checking, sir. I presume that the minutes scrutinised by the panel cannot vote in this, or can they?
I think the effect is effective to determine that Deputy Sutherland would stay for the time being at least, and therefore the ministers involved should not vote on this either. Well, I ask the greffier to open the voting. The vote is on whether the Assembly moves to the next item. A vote pour, the Assembly will move to the next item. A vote contre will not be in favour of that.
Sir, can I vote or not?
Yeah. Well, why wouldn't you be able
No,
to vote?
I wondered what you said, whether assistant ministers could vote.
No,
or
assistant ministers
Can't.
are not. They are not disqualified under Standing
fine.
Order 20.
Okay, thank you.
So you were
Thank you.
able to vote. Very well. The proposition has been obeyed. Closing the vote. Oh, right. Okay. Sorry, I was forgetting that we have members in the chat. So if members have had the opportunity of casting their votes, I ask the greffier to close the voting. There are 22 votes pour, 22 votes contre, 1 abstention. Accordingly, the proposition is defeated. The debate continues.
So could I ask for the vote to be read out, please?
Yes. Both sides, Stephanie?
Yes, and even the abstention.
Those members voting pour, the Conitar, St Brelard, Trinity, St Peter, St Martin, St John, Grouville, St Juan, St Mary and St Saviour, and Deputies Labby, Luce, Dublate, Lahigara, Ayer, Gardner, Gorst, Moore, War, Renouf, Rose Binet, Jeune and Alex Curtis. Those members voting contre, the Conitar, St Helier, St Lawrence and St Clement, Deputies Southern, Morell, Rob Ward, Al, Farnham, Mesick, Balash, Coles, Porre, Scott, Catherine Curtis, Howell, Tom Binet, Kovac, Barbara Ward, Stevenson, Andrews, Feltham and Tadier, and Deputy Ferry abstained.
Very well, the debate is resumed. Deputy Labby. Deputy Labby, you wish to speak?
No, I think I said it all. I don't think we should be having this debate in this forum. I had wished that the scrutiny panel and the liaison panel could go away and sort it out as adults. But obviously that's not the case, so I have very little to add. Thank you.
Deputy Farnham.
Well, sir, I had it had crossed my mind to also propose that we move to the next item. Of course, not remembering that that actually didn't finish the debate. It actually just left it in limbo, which are probably not fair on any of those involved. Probably not in the best interests of the Assembly or the important work that Scrutiny and the Health Department have to do. So I simply say that I think it falls to this Assembly to lead by example for the island on how we treat each other and our colleagues. This Assembly and the government, the Chief Minister, previous governments have always, especially more recently, been advocates of best behavioural practice, anti-bullying, always encouraging victims of such practices to come forward. And I'm not
by any means saying so that there has been bullying or malpractice there, because one of the challenges here is the available evidence. And I think this proposition by Deputy Balash is premature, as other members have said, because of that reason. And it should, I think Deputy Labby of Greville said this perhaps, should have been something for the new Commissioner of Standards to have a look at and take an independent view and carry out their own inquiries. But if this Assembly can't lead by example, sir, then I think that is unacceptable. We can disagree, we can be assertive with our strongly held views and convictions, but we must win our debates, we must win our arguments based on a facts, by presenting a strong case, a persuasive argument supported by research and facts. And I have noticed that we do, in this day of social media and all sorts of electronic communications and media, sir, we do sometimes fall victim to opinion and subjective views and conjecture, sir. And I think we need to lead by example. So I hope, sir, a lot has been said. I hope we can come to a satisfactory conclusion today and we can all move on. Thank you.
Deputy Morrell.
Thank you, sir. Actually, it wasn't to speak, it was rather to propose Standing Order 84, if that may be possible, sir.
You're giving 30 minutes notice of your intention in 30 minutes' time to put them to the vote.
That's correct.
Very well. Well, you're entitled to give notice at this stage. It's been more than an hour since the debate opened, and as I say, you can give notice. And we'll have to see where we are, but it could well be that we're finished before 30 minutes is up. Who knows? Very well. Yes. Is there any other member? Yes, Deputy Gorst.
Thank you, sir. It seems to me, sir, that the intention of Deputy Labby in proposing Standing Order 85 was to allow for the conversations to take place, which many members have said that they would wish to have take place prior to making a decision. Members are not afraid to make a decision. It is just quite difficult to make a decision on the evidence before us. And for my part, the reason it is difficult is there are two competing priorities at play. One is arising from the letter that the chair of the scrutiny panel received around the behaviour of panel members, and we've heard that argument, and we've heard, I think, the very good contributions from the two panel members involved in that complaint. The other is that those, and how, in that relation, and how we as an Assembly should ensure that there are policies and procedures in place to ensure that officials are treated appropriately and aren't bullied. And that is right. The other, of course, is that the chair, upon receipt of the letter, rather than following a process that we might understand and as outlined in such policies, as I understand it, and as reiterated not only in his submission but also in his speech today, simply asked those two members to resign from the panel. That, to me, doesn't seem to be following due care and process either. And it's two rights don't make a wrong. I'm not sure quite so what two wrongs make, but they certainly don't make a right. Now, so I'm going to, rather than dwell on all of the personalities and all of those issues, I'm going to circle back round to the intention of the Deputy, not the Deputy of Greville anymore, so I do ask for your forgiveness, Deputy Labby. I'm going to circle back round to the intention of her request for moving on. and other members have touched on it. And as I see it, sir, a number of things ideally should happen before we vote on the competency of Deputy Southern to continue to be chair of this panel, because we don't yet know whether that case has been proven. Firstly, a number of members have asked the mover of this proposition to withdraw it. So I know it's his birthday and I wish him many happy returns of the day. But if I were him, sir, I certainly would not wish to withdraw it without some undertakings on the part of others, because it is really important at a time of such momentous change that needs to take place in our health service. It's important that that panel continues to function. But equally, the vice chair and the two panel members are left in a position where the two panel members have great experience in the health provision across the island, and therefore their contribution is to be valued. That is why members voted for them to sit on this panel. But they sit here this afternoon with a request to resign. And having that request to resign, of course, how can they function on the panel with the chair that has asked them to resign? And so the first thing I think that needs to take place, if we are to resolve this without creating a division through the Assembly, is for the chair of the panel, in his response to the debate, to make it absolutely clear that he withdraws that request for them to resign from the panel, and that he likewise, having withdrawn that request, seeks to have further conversation with the Health Minister to understand fully what her concerns were and how they can be best dealt with. Because others have made the very well made point that the two members in question are new, they are passionate, they are formidable, and they wish to see improvements to Jersey's health service, as we all do. And they are using those skills in the scrutiny function. But there have been concerns raised, and therefore those concerns need to be addressed. This Assembly is not the forum to address those concerns. So I ask that he makes that commitment, and that he makes the commitment to sit down, probably with the Scrutiny Liaison Committee. I am slightly surprised that, and maybe the chair of Scrutiny Liaison Committee is going to interrupt me and say, no, he's done everything he can to try and resolve this problem before it got to this point, because that's where, in the first instance, scrutiny matters should be resolved, as we heard from the Constable of St Mary, as happened when he was chair of scrutiny panel. Failing that, sir, I think the appropriate place would then be to go to PPC. In other places, sir, we might have expected the president of the or chair of the or speaker to involve themselves as well, but we understand why that might not be appropriate in our case. And to allow for at least the 3 weeks that would have been granted had we accepted Standing Order 85, to allow at least those 3 weeks conversations to take place to see whether those issues that have been raised can be addressed, to see whether those members of the panel can continue to work constructively together and put in whatever arrangements are necessary to allow that to happen. And if in 3 weeks' time the Vice Chair and the two members of the panel feel that it is a breakdown which is not repairable, then I would have no difficulty with voting to see a new chair of that panel. Because I've got to be clear with the Assembly, sir. Nearly called him Senator there. Had Deputy Balash stood to be chair of the Health and Social Security panel right at the start of this term, and he'd competed head-to-head with Deputy Southern, I'm sorry to say this to Deputy Southern, but he knows what I'm going to say, my vote would have been with Deputy Balash. So I've got no problem with Deputy Balash chairing this panel, but this is not where we find ourselves. We find ourselves in an adversarial situation with a number of unanswered questions, with individuals, members' motives which have been challenged and questioned. They haven't had the appropriate forum in which to address those issues. They've made brief interventions here, of course, as was right. But they themselves should be afforded proper opportunity to sit down and discuss the complaints raised, just like the individuals that the Minister has raised the complaints on behalf of also should have those complaints handled. And if the chair of the panel is able to give those undertakings and commit to that process, and it's quite a big if, I look across the Assembly to the mover of the vote of no confidence, and if he receives those commitments and confirmations, I wonder, say, if he could find it in his heart on his birthday to stay this proposal to see if that can be worked out during the course of the next 3 weeks.
Will the deputy give way?
For what purpose?
I'm in the spirit of conciliation and listening to the wise words from Deputy Gorst, I wonder whether he might be willing to add something to his request to Deputy Southern for a way out of this impasse. And that is not merely to withdraw his request for the resignations of the 2 deputies, but also to undertake that during the period of time when all these issues are carefully considered, the scrutiny panel will be allowed to operate as it should do, with meetings taking place and not being cancelled as they have been for the last fortnight.
So I'm pleased to have that intervention clarification. So if I may, it had never crossed my mind that anything other than the panel would operate normally and continue its hearings. Otherwise, the commitment to the process would have been false and not real. Panel has to sit in those that 3-week period. But so I know I'm perhaps clutching at straws and ever optimistic that we can find ourselves in a better, more unified position in due course. So, of course, I'm happy to add that request to the chair of the panel to make that commitment to the Assembly. Thank you, sir.
Much. Deputy Morrell, you were...
Thank you. The quizzical look on my face is I'd like to understand, so where in standing orders allowing Deputy Balash to speak in that way? Where in standing orders is that allowed?
Well, I had thought that it was coming into a point of clarification. It didn't do so. Unfortunately, that is the case. But I had thought that's what was going to be, that was what was going to resolve, and I simply, I'm afraid, wasn't fast enough to stop the deputy when it came clear that wasn't the case. Very well. Deputy Lewis.
Thank you, sir, and I'd hoped for a moment that I wouldn't have had to get up and make the speech. Deputy Balash, in his opening remarks, referred to the letter from the Minister, and I'd just like to comment on that first, if I may. The Deputy said it was factually wrong and misguided, and be that as it may, I was dismayed yesterday morning to see reports in the media of this letter before States members had it circulated to them, and I'd just like to start by saying to the Minister, I don't think that was very procedurally correct, and I regret that States members didn't get to see it before the wider media. Anyway, Deputy Balash also said that each of us perceives scrutiny engagement in different ways, and he may well be right. One thing he is absolutely right about is, of course, that rudeness, aggression and inappropriate language is not good enough. Scrutiny needs to be about firm questioning, it needs to be challenging and testing, as the Deputy said. It also needs to be about examination and cross-examination, and all those things I agree with him on. I also agree with Deputy Southern when he says scrutiny should be about good conduct. It should be about showing respect, and of course it's about showing courtesy. Deputy Southern said good working relations result in good work and allow scrutiny to function as a critical friend. And of course he is absolutely right about that too. As I know only too well, chairs of scrutiny panels need to ensure fairness. They allude to allow some slack, as Deputy Balash alluded to in his speech, and they need to moderate discussion. And one of the questions I found myself asking after I read the letter very late in the day from the Minister sent to Deputy Southern was, should he have sorted it? Could he have done things differently? Well, certainly. Could he have gone that final mile? And one thing he could well have done is gone to SLC, where I sit on with the other chairs, to maybe seek a further remedy to resolve this unsavoury item. Deputy Southern said trust had broken down, or has broken down, and it's clear that it has. But one question I would put to the Deputy, which side has been responsible for this breakdown in trust? Clearly, its wording could have been better, and Deputy Howell stood up this afternoon and apologised, said that she should have asked questions instead of making statements. Deputy Southern said evidence should be acquired in scrutiny meetings, and he is absolutely right. People should not go into scrutiny hearings with preconceived ideas. You acquire that evidence through asking questions, and members like myself, sir, have come into this debate this afternoon looking for evidence, and I found myself asking these two final questions. Is there enough evidence this afternoon to bring a vote of no confidence? And what I do is find myself taking 3 steps back, because what members will have to do before they answer that question is to say to themselves, is there enough evidence here in order for Deputy Southern to ask 2 members of his panel to resign? That is the question that members need to think on before they get to the vote of no confidence. Thank you, sir.
Deputy Mezek.
Thank you, sir. And as many members have already said in this debate, it is deeply regrettable that we're here at all spending hours debating this motion. In my time in the States, I can recall few other days where I felt the Assembly has covered itself in less glory than it has today, and I think that many members of the public will be aghast seeing this chamber being used as a place to wash dirty linen in public. It is not helpful for any of us to be in a situation where it's essentially one person's word against another's, he said, she said, talking about events that almost none of us were in the room for. That is an entirely regrettable position to be in, and I, for one, am very disappointed that the Assembly has to spend time doing this. I think that's regrettable for all of us involved. It's regrettable for Deputies Barbara Ward and Howell because they are new members of the Assembly. They have not served on scrutiny for that long, and it provides an opportunity for issues to be aired publicly that carry reputational risks for them, which it would have been much better for those to have been dealt with privately. But so, and I have to say this, I think it's also very sad for an innocent man to have his name attached to this proposition, and that is Deputy Southern, who I actually think has attempted to deal with this in as good a way as possible. And had he perhaps been given more time before the proposer of this motion decided to lodge this, which I understand was in relatively short order when he did that, then perhaps other options would have been available. And so I do wonder what options are available to scrutiny chairs in this position. The chairs of scrutiny panels, and I've got the code of practice for scrutiny panels in front of me, sir, and it talks about the role of the scrutiny chair and says that their main responsibilities include establishing an appropriate and effective working relationship with ministers within the panel's remit, and it talks about working closely with colleagues and panel officers to establish clear working practices to help the panel function professionally, efficiently and effectively. So from the testimony that Deputy Southern has given, it seems like there have been issues that have been going on for quite some time now, issues that have been raised not just in scrutiny meetings or hearings, but also in training sessions. We've heard Deputy Southern refer to, a few other members contributing to this debate have referred to that, where it sounds like substantial leeway was given, and where it sounds like Deputy Southern had many conversations along the line to try to encourage members along. New members who don't have much experience in scrutiny, you don't press the nuclear option right at the start. You do things softly and encourage, offer training, and as we've heard, some training has occurred. And it was eventually when a very serious letter came from the Minister for Health to the chair of the panel that Deputy Southern evidently reached a conclusion that there was a serious risk now that the scrutiny panel would lose any chance of having a good working relationship with its minister so that it can conduct its work effectively and professionally. So we have seen Deputy Southern in this chamber and in other places as a passionate politician, deeply principled, able to pursue political points very effectively on the floor of this chamber, and know exactly when to take that hat off and put his scrutiny hat on and adopt the approach that is outlined in our code of practice, which is that we don't pursue political agendas. We are evidence-based and objective. And that means, sir, whilst we may be capable of making enemies because of our politics, I know I've certainly got one or two of those myself, but when you sit round the scrutiny table, that is meant to be put aside, and you sit opposite ministers and their officers, and you treat them with respect. Even if you don't like what they're pursuing, even if you don't like what they say, you treat them with respect, you welcome them in, and you develop a relationship so that at the very least, your panel chair and minister are able to pick up the telephone, talk to one another, and be frank about the serious issues that we're facing, know when at scrutiny perhaps has to take a more robust approach versus when a more softly approach may be more appropriate. And all of these options are at scrutiny's disposals, and a good chair knows when each approach is the more appropriate one. And Deputy Southern's record shows that he has many years of being very good at doing that. And I also wonder if this motion of no confidence in Deputy Southern is accepted today and he ceases to be the chair and another chair is put in his place, what happens then? Do we end up in a situation where that panel continues without these issues of trust being addressed between panel members and the minister, which will render its ability to conduct its work more difficult, especially having, and you know, it would be down to the Assembly to decide this, but the proposer of the vote of no confidence has said that he'll put his name forward to chair the panel if it succeeds, and it sounds like he is prepared to give more slack than the current chair is on those issues of behaviour of scrutiny panel members. What happens then? Is that going to help build a better relationship between the panel and the minister? And is that good for scrutiny? Is it good for government? Is it good for the public of Jersey? I would suggest it would not be. I want to see scrutiny chairs have good relationships with all of their ministers. So I scrutinised two ministers as part of my scrutiny role. Those are two members with whom I have deep political disagreements very often, and we will thrash that out on the floor of this chamber when necessary. But when those members come to my scrutiny panel, they're treated with respect by other members. We are warm to one another, and we may make pleasant small talk beforehand, but we ask tough questions, we put things to ministers, and we hear them out and understand what they've got to say. That, I believe, is how you get good scrutiny done. If you have a political agenda that you want to pursue on top of that, you take that hat off and you do it transparently on the floor of this chamber. Deputy Southern was right in everything he said in his opening remarks about how good scrutiny is meant to be conducted. It sounds to me that over a prolonged period of time, he attempted to get these issues addressed with some panel members, offering them an opportunity to very quietly, in a very heated circumstance where it appeared trust was about to be broken between the minister and the panel, to quietly step aside, have a think about how that might be fixed, perhaps take extra training if that's an option, and the Scrutiny Liaison Committee is having discussions on those training packages as we speak, and had a very helpful meeting last week to that effect. That was before the vote of no confidence was lodged, if my memory recalls. Those members' reputations would have been protected by that, because we wouldn't have had to have this fractious and unpleasant debate in this assembly, and he had indicated that the door may well be open in future months to come back on board, hit the ground running, and by that point, hopefully things would have cooled down and the panel would be in a better position to conduct its work. I think that Deputy Southern has not created this situation. He didn't ask members, his panel members, to conduct themselves in the ways that have been alleged. Alleged, unfortunately, is the only word I can use for it, with what evidence is available. He didn't ask a minister to send him a very strong letter to him that would have been very difficult for him not to act upon. And he most certainly did not ask Deputy Balash to bring a vote of no confidence in him to this assembly, so all of these issues could be aired publicly in this rather undignified way. So I maintain full confidence in Deputy Southern's ability as a scrutiny panel chair, and without the possibility, it seems, of the proposer of this motion withdrawing this proposition, I would urge members to vote in support of Deputy Southern and against this motion of no confidence, allow the dust to then settle after that, and offer him the opportunity as chair to work out what is the best way forward to make sure that his panel can conduct its work robustly and ask those very important, difficult questions that need to be asked of the ministers that his panel scrutinises, but to do so in a way which is in accordance with the scrutiny code of practice and the levels of respect and decency that we are not just obliged by our code of conduct, but frankly morally obliged to abide by when we conduct that work in scrutiny. And with that opportunity to do that, we will be in a much better position than if we were to cast him aside from this panel and risk replacing him with a chair that perhaps won't seek to uphold those same standards that Deputy Southern has over 20 years of experience in upholding. So, sir, I urge members to vote against this vote of no confidence.
Deputy Tadier.
Thank you, sir. Can I ask before I start to speak, sir, how long I've got and whether the guillotine comes during my speech or at the end of it?
Well, the short answer is it is open to Deputy Morell to move the guillotine at 17:11. So it depends how quickly you're going to speak, I imagine, Deputy Tadier.
That's fine. When you say it's open for him to do that, will you invite him to do that, sir, or will he just stand up?
No, it's entirely a matter for Deputy Morell whether he does or not. He's given notice that he might. It's one doesn't know whether he's going to or not.
Sir, do I have the ability to cut Tadier off?
I'm just wondering about how it works, sir. If I'm speaking whilst the time elapses, do I have to give way, or would he raise a point of order?
I think the position is, if I can judge by hand signals, which I've not been singularly good at doing today, then I think you'll be allowed to finish your speech if it is reasonable length before the guillotine is moved.
Thank you, sir.
was that-
What I'll try and
was
do,
that
I've
correct,
got no intention of using my
Was
full
that
15
correct?
minutes.
Deputy Morell, have I understood you correctly? Deputy Morell, do I understand you correctly?
So you do, but I don't think I'm very popular for that, but yes, you do.
Very well. Deputy Tadier, enough talking about talking. Let's
decide which points to raise and see if I've got enough time to do it, sir. Thank you.
There we are.
In one sense, a vote of no confidence should be fairly clear-cut. So it should really be when somebody, a chair or a minister of a panel or a department has done something which is fairly clear-cut and wrong, and quite serious as well, and that therefore it's brought to the Assembly after serious consideration. We have a strange scenario here whereby, although it's not the only issue, I don't think, that has been raised, is that it's been triggered primarily by a letter sent by the Minister for Health and Social Services to the chair of a scrutiny panel complaining about the behaviour of two members of that scrutiny panel. And yet somehow it's all transpired that now it's resulted in a vote of no confidence against the chair of that panel, not against the panel itself or against the two members. And I think that's because you can't have a vote of no confidence in the members of the panel, I don't think. And I don't know if you can have a vote of no confidence in the whole of the panel. So effectively what we've got here, I see it as very much a proxy debate that we're having from maybe two or more factions with most of us, I think, stuck in the crossfire or feeling like we're stuck in the crossfire in between. And there is no real beneficial outcome, I don't think, or satisfactory outcome either way to this vote, although there could be, of course, but it will require an element of movement and compromise, I think, on both sides. The first point to make is, of course, that Deputy Southern didn't bring this proposition. It's not his proposition. And we shouldn't be getting confused with the fact that this is not an either or. But so it's interesting to note, and I'll make this point early, that we have had a proposal which was voted down by the narrowest of margins to move on to the next item. And interestingly, had that vote succeeded, we would have been in the same position as if this vote is also voted against. And I guess what I'm saying in a roundabout kind of way is that everybody who voted to move on to the next item should logically also vote against this vote of no confidence, because it puts us in exactly the same position. But by moving on to the next item, we would have been in a situation where the panel still existed with Deputy Southern as chair and the other members on the panel, and they would have been able to meet if they wanted to. And by voting against the vote of no confidence today, we will also be in that same position. The next point is to say that if you vote against this vote of no confidence, as I intend to do, that isn't the same as saying you don't have confidence in the panel, or that you don't have confidence in Deputy Barbara Ward or Deputy Howell. It's entirely possible to say that you're not sure, or that you actually are sympathetic to the position of the two deputies, the new deputies on the panel, and that you also have confidence in Deputy Southern. That's entirely consistent. So one of the unintended consequences of voting for the vote of no confidence and that succeeding will be that we will have a minister and a panel perceivably and probably that can't work together. So whilst we might have currently a panel which can't work together internally, the alternative is perhaps even worse, of having a minister and a scrutiny panel where there are perhaps unsurmountable differences, and we may get a withdrawal of goodwill from either party. And I think that puts us in an even more risky position, sir. What I would encourage the minister, whatever the result is to consider either whether the complaint that she made to the chair can be resolved through a different mechanism. So whether she can perhaps being involved in some kind of process of reconciliation, because I think that it's not just an internal panel issue here. I think there are wider issues involving officers and the minister, and at least one other minister we know has been involved in this process as well by signing the vote of no confidence. But if she feels strongly about that, I think she needs to write to the Commissioner for Standards and say that she has issues which she doesn't think have been addressed. And I don't say that because I automatically think there's been any wrongdoing on the part of the two deputies, but because she clearly does. And again, I think we get back to the point where Deputy Southern is very much caught in the middle of this. He's received a complaint. He's tried to deal with it in the best way that he knows how to, with, I think, as Deputy Mezek has said, with limited prescribed options for doing that. Now, I heard what Deputy Barbara Ward said earlier on, that she decided not to come to the meeting. She was asked not to go to the subsequent meeting. And I would interpret that as being a time for reflection. In fact, the Deputy Southern was saying, don't come to the next meeting. There are some issues we need to consider. And it may well be that the deputy or a different deputy might have said, actually, you know what, I think in some of those areas, I think maybe I should have done things differently. And I'm sympathetic to those two deputies in particular, because I know that there's a very fine line between being robust, whether it's in a scrutiny hearing or even in this assembly, and perhaps crossing over into that line. I also know that there's a grey area between framing your question by making certain statements, usually statements of fact, I would have to add, so that you can then go on to ask the minister for his or her opinion, and in fact going into the darker part of that grey area and actually simply stating your own opinions because that's your mind's made up. And, you know, I'm not saying that I may not have been guilty of that in the past, but I think it helps to reflect on where that line is and where those grey areas also exist. So entirely sympathetic to the difficulties that do arise in the politics, even in the politics of scrutiny, sir. So I'm also concerned about what this message this might send out, because I certainly would have to consider my own position. I've just joined a scrutiny panel, which I'm raring to get stuck into. We've already started work on it, in fact, into the with Deputy Porre as chair, looking at immigrant workers and their experiences in Jersey. We just started a call for evidence. I would have to question what the attitude of the Assembly was in removing a chair that I thought was a very good chair, that I think one of the deputies already said brought a really good, Deputy Andrews said, brought a really good proposition where they showed some teamwork, working together on an evidence-based approach to win a proposition on the Assembly in a joined-up way. So I think we do have evidence of a panel here that can work very well together, and I would hope that maybe that panel could remain intact. And so I know it's coming up to 8 minutes, and I've still got lots of time if I wanted it, but I think it's a good point to finish there. So is that I don't want to have to go back to my reform colleagues and say, look, I'm not sure if the Assembly values scrutiny, and I'm not sure whether we need to consider our positions on scrutiny. I know they would find that a very difficult thing to consider, because they are fully supportive of their role and our role in effectively scrutinising this Assembly. But I think by supporting this vote of no confidence today, the Assembly risks more than simply getting rid of a very experienced chair of scrutiny who's done nothing wrong, but I think it risks damaging the relationship between ministers and the scrutiny process irrevocably, perhaps for the rest of this term. So I do ask that members would consider voting against this vote of no confidence, rather than, I would say, than abstaining. I understand why members might wish to abstain, but I also understand that you're innocent till proven guilty, and if there isn't any evidence or enough evidence for you to make a decision that Deputy Southern deserves a vote of no confidence against him, then I think you have to go back to the default position, which is that you have confidence in him. That's all we're saying. And then we then give the panel, I think, the breathing space and the room in the next 3 weeks to have the conversations that they need to have now, perhaps with other people that they can turn to with experience and with positions of being able to assist either pastorally, internally, and we allow that period of work to happen, sir. And therewith I end my speech.
Thank you very much, Teddy. Very well. Connie St John. Sorry, did you wish to?
So we were under the guillotine motion, standing order 84. Is that...
Well, no, you have to propose. You have to now propose.
In which case, sir, I'm proposing it. I apologise.
Right. The guillotine has been proposed. Standing order 84 requires that I'm satisfied myself more than an hour has passed, which clearly it has. Notice had been given 30 minutes before, which clearly it has, and that would not be an infringement of the rights of the minority because obviously a substantial number of members have spoken. Accordingly, that proposition will be in order, and I must put it, if it is seconded, to the debate without further ado. There is, however, a tension between Standing Order 84 and Standing Order 103E, which provides, the former provides that it goes straight to a closing vote by the proposer. The latter provides that Deputy Southern would have a chance of a speech beforehand. Adopting the provisions of Standing Order 167, which gives me a discretion to resolve any difficulties, if the proposal to close the debate is passed, I would then call immediately upon Deputy Southern, who would have his opportunity to speak before calling upon Deputy Balash. Obviously, we are approaching 5:25, and if we action matters at the moment, there is a very good possibility that we will go very substantially past 5:30, but that's a matter for members to vote upon in due course. Deputy Southern, do you have a procedural issue?
A procedural issue in the fact that the Minister for Health has not spoken yet, and it's a question of trust.
I'm sorry, Deputy Southern, that's
panel.
I can't allow any speech on that nature. The reason being is that I must immediately put the proposal to the vote without any debate. That's standing orders require me expressly to do that, I'm afraid. Is it seconded? Very well. I'll deal with this by way of the appel. The vote is on the proposal under Standing Order 84, the result of which, if passed, I will call immediately upon Deputy Southern and thereafter upon Deputy Balash. I invite members to return to their seats, and I ask the greffier to open the voting. A vote pour will bring the matter to a close following the speeches of Deputy Southern and Deputy Balash. A vote contre would not do that.
Sir.
If members have had the opportunity of casting their...
Sir, I've inadvertently pressed the wrong button, sir.
Well, if you press the other button, it changes back again.
Nice one.
Yes, you're not actually stuck. It's if you press the other, it'll record your last press. That is right, greffier, isn't it? It's right. Very well. If members have had the opportunity of casting their vote, then I ask the greffier to close the voting. The proposition has been adopted. 36 votes pour, 7 votes contre, no abstentions. Accordingly, we now...
Sir.
Accordingly,
the conch to be read out, please.
The conch to be read out, yes.
Those members voting contre, the Conor St Lawrence, Deputies Luce, Gorst, Balash, Alex Curtis, Andrews and Tadier.
Can I test the mood of the Assembly? We come up to 5:25. It may be the Assembly feels it's by far best to conclude this matter this evening and sit as late as necessary. It may be that the Assembly feels that it would be wrong to start the last two closing speeches and we should resume again tomorrow morning. There are other options, of course, but I wonder if someone wishes to move a proposition. Otherwise, I'll ask at 5:30 whether the Assembly should adjourn. That will be mid-speech.
Oh, sorry, sir. Yes. What are you calling, sir?
I don't mind.
Could I propose that we adjourn now, sir, so that members can consider things further over evening?
Is that seconded?
Seconded,
Yes, sir.
All those in favour of adjourning overnight, kindly show. Those against? Right. Very well. The Assembly stands adjourned until 9:30 tomorrow morning.